Hello, YouTube. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. It is the 22nd of April, 2024. As I said, hope everybody's doing really, really well. Been just in a state of just like I feel like a hockey puck. I just absolutely had just the most difficult time getting any motivation done at all this week. Has been really tough. Maybe part of it's just coming down off of the 7 days a week I was here for those months and months writing that Frank Luke story. But anyway, I do have some good news for those of you who've been asking. I was happy to find out last Thursday night after I ended Stratosphere Lounge. Called the vet, waiting for the bad news about Bean's results, and expecting to hear 4 to 6 weeks left from this large mass he had. They got the biopsy back, and there was no sign of cancer at all. It's an enlarged liver, which means they'd like him on a different cat food. But not only is it not only do I not have to face that, at least not immediately, also, it's not $5,000 worth of surgery either. So that just couldn't have been better. And thank you for everybody who was, pulling and praying and all the rest of it. And I was so expecting the worst that it was just a really, really, really nice surprise and a huge relief for me. So hooray. I have to bring Bean in sometime for a show. That's just great. That cat has been really, I just don't know how I'd be here without him, honestly. He's just a really good boy. So thank you for all the kind words and all the thoughts. Ever since I mentioned he was sick, people keep asking, how's he doing? People want to see the shirt. The shirt's, I think I've worn the shirt before. Made in the U.S. by our friend Hornet Works. There you go. So so wonderful news. So that's just great. And everything else has just kind of been, a lot of got over the eclipse gobsmack, and have been for a week or so or something like that. And otherwise, just doing pretty well. I had. Natasha and I stumbled into the Bean Abides. Thank you so much for that, JB Coulter. Natasha and I were looking for something to watch. I've been really enjoying being able to be home for at some time before midnight and for the weekends. And we saw a trailer for a show on Netflix called Three Body Problem. And the trailer looked interesting enough, and the whole first episode looked kind of okay. So we watched the first episode, and then the second night we watched the second episode, and got a little more interesting. There's just a lot of spoiler alerts here because I just really want to talk about this. We ended up watching the whole 8 of them. A new Netflix sci-fi series called Three Body Problem. And you don't have to be a screenwriter to just realize just how unbearably bad it is. But the very first thing that you notice about it is it's about 6 or 7 incredibly diverse friends, and they're all like the smartest people in the world, and there's physicists, and this one fashion model has developed her entire nanotechnology line, because that's what fashion models will often do, is go out and start companies that create these nanofibers and in between smoke breaks and all the rest of it. 28-year-old, 26-year-old, low key, low middle end fashion model types go out and start nanotechnology companies and become leaders in the field. And the smartest smartest physicist in the world is this young Japanese woman. And it starts out with, the reason I really wanted to see it, because it starts out with the Cultural Revolution in So lots of spoiler alerts here. I'm saving you some time. Not recommended. But it starts out in Mao's Cultural Revolution, and this daughter of a physicist. The physicist is being shamed, and everybody's got their little red books. And I thought, cool, it's going to be kind of an anti-communist sort of a manifesto kind of a thing, maybe. But no, she turns out to be an enemy of the people, and then somehow she goes from breaking rocks out in a gulag kind of environment to working at this facility where China makes contact with this alien civilization. And they get the signal, but the signal essentially says from an alien civilization, you're lucky you're talking to me. I'm a pacifist. Do not contact this race because we'll come and conquer you and, exterminate you and all the rest of it. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So she does it. And the reason she does it is because, I'll save that. So she does it. Then you got a guy who inherits the biggest oil company in the world, which means he's the richest man in the world, as if, are there any oil people in the top 10 anymore? Are there any in the top 50 anymore? But this guy is like some kind of hippie. He's out there in the middle of China in 1972. He's in the backwoods of China trying to protect this species of swallow. So he's an American hippie who's in red China trying to protect a species from extinction. And the 1972 communist Chinese have no problem with that whatsoever. They just, kind of think, okay, what harm can it be? And I'm just sitting here just, gobsmacked. Where people were being executed for knowing the name of an American comic book character. And this guy's out there. And furthermore, he's interrupting the people's work and trying to stop them from tearing down this forest so he can protect the brown-throated swallow or something like this. So you can get an idea for the rigor here. Anyway, this guy meets this Chinese woman who's gone ahead and sent the signal. And for reasons that are beyond me, because there's not one person in this entire show that's even likable, let alone lovable. They become, of course, just an item, and he starts a giant cult, and here's the part where it really starts to get interesting. Working together, they recruit the finest minds on the planet, all the best and brightest, and they're having this summit in London because these aliens are coming, and they refer to the aliens as my lord, and I'm thinking, my lord, that's an odd request. What would you like us to call you, aliens on the other end of the phone? You can refer to me as my lord. I'm not making this up, but this is just a smattering of the kind of things that happen in this thing. Okay, well, that's reassuring. Now, a couple of things in this thing were actually kind of cool. One of them was, they said the signal is from 4 light years away, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure that there's nothing 4 light years away. 4.6 light years away, there's an Alpha Centauri system, and the show is called Three-Body Problem, and the idea is that they live in this chaotic solar system, so their progress is constantly, stopped, and then got this virtual reality game, and they're trying to figure out how to predict when they're going. It's just a mess. But here are the things that I noticed about it. When you first meet the group of young 20-something scientists, the smartest physicists in the world, the smartest businessman in the world, the smartest manufacturer in the world, just all of it. And they're sitting around a table, and I realize I hate these people. I hate every one of them. They're just not nice. There's nothing likable about them. This one guy who's an American physicist, this black guy, he's just complete simp for this girl, and she says, I need you to come over. I'm feeling bad. So he sleeps outside her house until she wakes up in the morning. She walks out the door, curses him out for not having been there earlier, and he says, oh, I'm sorry. And it's just like, what? And then it turns out that after this is, you know, so there's Little Lazy as a screenwriting exercise on Stratosphere Studio. There's Little Lazy and there's Big Lazy. So I'll give you an example of Little Lazy. As once you realize that these aliens are coming, and once we realize that they're going to come and probably try and conquer us, that I'll get to the Big Lazy in a minute. This is Little Lazy. They decide that they're going to raise money by selling titles to stars to billionaires. Now, that kind of thing goes back a long way. We did that in the planetarium, but at least in the planetarium we did it. No, I guess come to think of it, we probably did it in real life. We sold, Jack Horkheimer had the idea of like, and he had this idea in 76 maybe, of basically you can buy a star. Now, what I think he was doing, I think the way he got around the hey, this is a complete fraud kind of thing, is I think he was talking about a star in the planetarium dome, a particular, you know, lens or pinhole. But I was the guy responsible for keeping the records on that as the stellar cartographer, became one of my many job titles. But in Three Body Problem, the billionaires are buying up these star names, and they're using this to raise money for planetary defense. Like, you know, great. So one of these guys, who's the one who's nice, simpy nice guy, different than the black guy simp. This is a thin British simp. All the men are simps, and all the women are girl bosses, and they're stunning and brave and powerful individuals. And anyway, he's out there pointing to the stars of the Big Dipper, and he says, and then that middle one in the handle is mine. And he's got a plaque. The guy says, what's the star called? And he says, well, the star is called DX3109. And I'm thinking, pretty sure those stars are called Mizar and Alcor. It was a naked-eyed twin. In fact, Mizar and Alcor are the most obvious double star in the entire sky, and it used to be done as a vision test, but they couldn't do that fundamental work. So let's just see how long this takes. I know that they're named Mizar and Alcor, but the guy could have bought a star, and they could have done, so what is it? So could have bought, what is that number? Hang on. It's got the Greek letter, it's got the Greek symbol. I don't know what the symbol is. I can't translate it. Probably gamma or delta. They could have bought Delta Ursa Majoris, but no, they bought DX3801 or something like that. It's big letters there. I just bought DX3801. And I just thought, that's just plain small lazy. That is, it's eta, theta. I can never remember those Greek letters. The Mizar and Alcor, double star. Anyway, so they could have gone with the names. They could have looked up whether it's eta, theta. I'm going to find out now just because I'm embarrassed that I can't read these actual Greek letters here. Come on. By the way, Mizar and Alcor mean the horse and the rider. Epsilon, Eta, Ursa Major, something like that. I always get so sidetracked on these things. Okay, so here you go. So that's small lazy, right? I mean, that's it took 3.5 minutes for me to get this, and I knew it already, but this is why you shouldn't have people who don't understand anything about astronomy writing science fiction about astronomy. So that's small lazy. Here's big lazy. Now, I hope you're sitting down for this, because this is genuinely really quite remarkable. So they send out this, they get the signal from these aliens. They send out a return signal. The return signal comes back. they're in a state of constant communication with the aliens. It turns out that the aliens have a way to use entangled quantum, so they have instantaneous ability to talk. Now, I'm not making this up. The aliens decide that they need to come to Earth because, they need to come to Earth and their planet's dying. That's a fresh idea. And so they launch this gigantic fleet from a star that's 4 light years away, and they achieve they achieve 1% of the speed of light getting here, which I thought was reasonable and kind of different and cool, which is why I watched first 2 or 3 episodes before I realized what we were having problems with. And so this alien fleet is on its way, and they're going to arrive in 400 years. And yet we're able to talk with them. And now here, stay with me on this. So the young, Chinese woman, dissident scientist who, goes from breaking rocks in a gulag to being handed the controls of a large radio observatory, as is often the case in communist countries. She and this guy who's got this vast oil wealth have basically taken an oil tanker called Judgment Day and have been sailing it around the world nonstop for 40 years. And they've got their entire, it's like a little ark. There's 1,000 people on there, little children, and they're speaking French, and everybody's talking about this and that, and how great it's going to be when our Lord comes, when these aliens come. So we've had these people talking to these aliens for 40 years now. Now, I'm not making this up. Then there's a scene with Jonathan Bryce. After talking to the aliens by this little box for 40 years, he ends up somehow talking about the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And the aliens say, well, why didn't the little girl know that this was a wolf? And he explains, well, because the wolf dressed like the little girl's grandmother. And the aliens come back, but why would they believe that? And then he said, well, because he said he was the girl's grandmother. And then the aliens say, we don't understand. Well, it's just a simple, he's trying to lure her into the house. We don't understand. He was lying to her. Lying? What's a lie? Well, a lie is when you give false information intentionally. And then there's like this long silence. And then they say, we understand you now. We are afraid of you. We cannot cohabitate with you. And then they stop talking. Their fleet's on the way. It's going to be here in 400 years. But they have checked out because they say, we cannot coexist with you. We cannot coexist with a species that tells a lie. They couldn't tell you what a lie was. And I thought, you might want to have had a more in-depth conversation before you launch an entire fleet of starships this way. It took you 40 years of daily conversation with your liaison on Earth. 40 years you've been talking to this guy, and you've just now figured out about lying? And you've already launched your fleet, and they're already on the way? It's a bit awkward, don't you think? I looked at that scene, I said, there's got to be some kind of a catch here. It's like, nope, that's what they're going with. And I just thought, how can any writer of any level of ability whatsoever leave a hole that big and not jump into it and commit suicide just out of sheer shame? Sheer shame. Right? So the whole thing is, Steve Whip says, Chinese propaganda, to say the least. You ain't heard nothing yet. So it was fun to watch because I know it's produced half the crew is Chinese, half the writers of the books are Chinese, and I'm sure there's just a big scat of Chinese Communist Party money in there. And so I'm watching this thing, and these things just keep happening. The aliens decide to acknowledge the signal. Here's what they do. They acknowledge the signal by having all of the stars in the sky flash. Like the sky just goes out, and then it comes back on and flashes, like Morse code. The entire sky, all the way around the world, is flashing like in Morse code. And that's at the end of I want to say at the end of episode 1. Beginning of episode 2 is inside a university or a lab or something, and it's it's kind of like water cooler conversation. Hey, what do you think about that whole business of the sky just flashing on and off last night? Oh, it was pretty weird, huh? Yeah, it sure was strange. And I'm thinking, if the entire sky went out, black, just went gone, and then appeared again, and then disappeared again, people would be screaming at the top of their lungs. And they would not stop screaming, ever. They would just keep screaming forever. This idea, it's like, oh, and finally in the news tonight, our human events correspondent, Joni Allen, is talking to people who watched the entire sky blink out last night all around the world. What'd you think about that? Well, it was really quite, I really wasn't expecting that at all. Honestly, Astronerd says it was written by a Chinese sci-fi writer and the Chinese government's not happy about the Western interpretation. Well, good. Now, that way nobody's happy about it. The whole thing, just on and off. And then it's like, oh, okay, whatever. Actually, I'm kind of, this is a personal, like a bugaboo for me, when people see like a person's head split open and like an alien tentacles come out and they just stand there and go, you would lose your freaking mind. You would lose your mind. Somebody was talking about that, and I forget where it was years ago, but they were doing a riff on the, man walks into a bar with a talking parrot thing. And they said if you had a parrot that was like actually speaking, you would just freak the hell out. So, it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and then they send 2 particles to Earth, which allows them to spy on us in real time. 2 protons, which they've unfolded into 11 dimensions and built a computer into it and then folded it back up again into a proton. And that they accelerated, and it sent it to Earth, and that little proton can be anywhere. So the little proton flies around and listens to everything that's going on the Earth, so the aliens have a complete knowledge of everything that we're doing, and every single conversation everywhere is recorded, and nothing is unknown to the aliens. They're omniscient, and that's because they sent 2 protons to Earth. And I'm thinking, that's kind of lazy. You can't think of a better way to do this. Yeah, so all our conversations are recorded. So I have to tell you, the leads, this young Chinese scientist woman, one of these guys is madly in love with her, and it's like, I don't even know how you could be madly in like with this person. They're charisma vacuums. They've got nothing redeemable about them. There's not anything about any of these people that was even likable, let alone lovable. I really wanted them all to die. I just wanted them to die. I was just so completely stunned as a professional at how shockingly unlikable these people are, especially the girl boss who's the world's leading expert in nanotechnology, who started her own nanotechnology company. There were 1 or 2 cool things in there. One of the episodes was actually had a sequence in it, was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, actually. They want the ship that the people that are waiting for the aliens to come, that are helping them take over the Earth. Judgment Day, they named it. So they know that they've been talking to the aliens in real time, and they know that they've been recording all this stuff, the Earth people who are trying to fight the alien invasion. And so they figure, we got to get a hold of those records. We want those transcripts. And I'm thinking, that seems like a good idea. It'd be good to know what the hell these traitors who've invited these aliens to come and conquer us, it'd be fun to know what they were talking about and get as much knowledge about these aliens as we possibly can. They say, well, you can't get a special forces team on there. There's 1,000 people on there, and by the time you're going to lose half your team, and not only that, you're going to you're just going to. But there's no way you can get to this device in time for it to not be destroyed. Okay, you could launch a missile attack on the ship, but you might blow up the thing you're looking for. I'm thinking, oh, okay. So they do something that I thought was actually, I don't think the idea was good, but the effects were tremendous. These idiots who are waiting for the aliens to come decide that they're going to take their ship that's been sailing for 40 years around the world, not gone to any ports at all ever. It's just a complete arc. Apparently it's refueled at sea, and this is like Invasion Central. These are where all the people who want the aliens to come, and I'll get to that in a minute. And they decide, well, we're going to go through the Panama Canal. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I understand the logic of that. If you need to get to the Pacific Ocean and you haven't touched port anywhere, why don't you just sail around Africa or out of the Mediterranean or wherever the hell you are? But you're going to go through the Panama Canal. Yeah, they're going through the Panama Canal in 10 days, or we know they're going through the Panama Canal. But, well, that's a bit thin, convenient for people that are trying to stay the hell away from everybody. I kind of like the idea of people who had a ship and they just stayed in international waters and just did everything out there. I thought that was a relatively cool idea. But the way they decide that they're going to get the information is they build like these two extraordinarily strongly reinforced arms, and then across the one on each bank of the canal at a narrow point through the passage, not through one of the locks, but just one of those very narrow channels. They built these two arms, and what they've done is they've connected these nanofibers, like every, looking back on, it's probably like every 3 feet. Nanofiber, 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 nanofiber. And then they raise this thing up when the ship is coming. And these nanofibers are so thin that this goes back a long, long way. First time I ever read about this was with William Gibson in Neuromancer or Burning Chrome or something like that. But if you have a substance that's just a few atoms thick but strong, it'll go through anything instantly because it's the sharpest of sharp things. The sharpest knife, sharpest scalpel is probably millions of atoms wide, and certainly hundreds of thousands of atoms wide. And so they put these things up, and the ship is just sailing along. And as the ship sails through these strung wires, they just slice the ship like a loaf of bread. And you're inside the ship, and you can't see the wires, so you just see people just getting cut in half or cut into fourths, and just. That was really impressive. I thought, wow, that's actually really cool. And then the next thing you know, you're back in this insane world where the supermodel who's built the nanotech company, who's gone down there to install these nano wires, is furious because people were killed. You killed people doing this. Well, yeah, we're at war with this alien civilization that's coming. You get it? So it was just such a gigantic mess. The other thing I thought that was cool, in fact, the only conceptual cool thing that they did in the whole thing was this idea that they're coming, and we know they're coming, and we know they're going to be here in 400 years, so what do we do about it? And people are making the argument, why are we even worrying about this? 400 years from now is it 12 generations or something? And after the aliens have launched their fleet to come to Earth, 30 years or 40 years after they've launched their fleet, these super advanced aliens who can do anything, super, super advanced, much, much smarter than we are. They launch their fleet to come to Earth after we respond to their message. And 30 or 40 years after they launch the fleet, they learn that we can lie, which means that they can't live with us. But they also figure out, well after they've launched their colonization fleet, that this species went from the first agriculture to the industrial era in about 7,000 years, from the industrial era to the information age in about 250 years, from the beginning of the information age to AI in 60 years. And these aliens realize that by the time they get here, we're going to be so far more advanced than they are that we're just going to wipe them out on arrival. So they're determined to destroy our science and to mess up all of our instruments and equations and I could just go on and on and on. When they have that summit of the best and the brightest, and it looks like a Hollywood cocktail party, and everybody's in their 20s and 30s, everybody. These are all the humans who are assisting the aliens to come and subjugate the Earth. And they're all the best people in the planet, the smartest of this and the smartest of that and the smartest of this. It's the World Economic Forum. It's exactly what it is. It's the World Economic Forum. And they're just so taken with how smart they are. And they bring in the Chinese woman scientist who's the leader of this movement. And they just worshipful applause for this individual who's invited these aliens to come and conquer us. And I'm thinking, this is every intellectual's wet dream. This for them is the wish fulfillment that the writer is engaging in. Now, I've had no problem with that at all, because the colonies is my wish fulfillment for how I'd like to see a government run. Star Trek was Gene Roddenberry's wish fulfillment for the kind of future that humanity could have. So, the Star Wars final trilogy is Kathleen Kennedy's wish fulfillment of what she wishes she could be. All powerful, not going to take any advice from any men, tough, putting people in their place, this kind of barking orders and having people say, yes, ma'am, and jump high, this childish view of authority. That's her wish fulfillment. So I don't have any problem with the wish fulfillment aspect, but the question is, what wish are you trying to fulfill? And seeing all of these, and when I say diverse, I mean the thing was shot in England, so it automatically has a I'd like to remind our British friends that I'm half British, but it automatically has a sense of, no, this can't possibly be real, because where's America in all this, and all of these intellectuals there, and then they raid the place and a bunch of them are killed, and I just thought, so here's the writer's wish fulfillment. It's the same as this Chinese woman scientist, the same as the oil guy, it's the same as all of these people. The reason that she responded, even though she was told by them, by one of their rogue members, don't answer the call, they did it anyway. And she did it anyway because she said, I grew up watching people tear other people apart. And I realized that there was no way that we could survive on our own. That humanity was just doomed to extinguish itself. And that our only hope was to invite smarter people to come over and tell us what to do and make us do it. That's our only hope. That's the meta of Three Body Problem, is that these people, the protagonists, think that the only way for the human race to survive is to have somebody come over and conquer us and treat us like children in the best case scenario, slaves in the middle case scenario, and garbage to be chucked out the door in the worst case scenario. And she says, I watched people, because the movie starts out with her, the show starts out with her watching her father getting beaten to death by Red Guard. And I'm thinking, well, that's, your view of humanity because you came from a communist hellhole. While they were beating your father to death for being a physicist in front of a crowd and everybody's shouting with their little red books, on the other side of the planet, they're watching Beverly Hillbillies and having themselves a fine old time. You know, it's like it just couldn't possibly have been more pathetic and just sad, you know. I talked about what simps these guys were to these strong, powerful women, and how they're always at their beck and call, even though they're not nearly as smart as they are. And I realized, yeah, he's simping the entire human species, you know, just simping it. We're not good enough. Yeah, they send a message, and the message is the aliens, after 35, 40 years of talking to us, these genius aliens realize that we're capable of lying. So they decide that they're not going to be friendly anymore. They're not going to protect their own liaisons on Earth anymore. They're just going to come in guns blazing 370 years from now, because they just figured out that we can lie. And so they send a message to scare us. And the message it appears on every screen in the world, you know, and it says, "You are bugs. You're bugs." That's the message. You are bugs in every language on Earth. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. You are bugs, but at the same time, you're bugs that are going to surpass us and slaughter us if we don't do something to keep tripping you up. So, aside from the one episode where the boat got sliced and diced, and that was pretty cool, the show started out as interesting. I was 10 minutes into it and saying, oh, okay, here we go. You know, girl boss, you know, fashion model who's invented nanotechnology, basically, and all of these other tropes and all the rest of this stuff, and all of this China-centric stuff and all that jazz. And I'm thinking, okay. And Natasha just saying, you know, look, just relax. It's got some interesting things visually, and, you know, let's just see where it goes. So by the time we get to the end of this, the Earth is going to be invaded 400 years from now, and there's a secret organization that's basically been working this whole time to combat these aliens. And so now I hope you're sitting down. In fact, I can't believe what's coming out of my mouth because it sounds so absurd. But basically, they decide that we're going to have to put up some kind of defense. So they, needless to say, immediately seek out the most capable, competent, effective, transparent, straightforward organization they can find, which is, of course, the United Nations. And the Secretary General of the United Nations is like a cross between Ella Fitzgerald and Lieutenant Uhura. And so they're going to do it at the United Nations. They decide that they're going to launch a probe to intercept the fleet and get some advanced intelligence data on the alien fleet as it's coming in. So they say, how do we have the capability of getting an object up to 1% of the speed of light? Well, it's absolutely impossible. It's completely impossible. There's no way to do it. Well, there's one way we could do it. And how's that? Well, we could do it with a chain of nuclear explosions. And I'm thinking, okay, somebody finally wrote, the person writing the science fiction actually read some science fiction. That's Project Orion. There was a serious study done. It was this gigantic, enormous, big spaceship with a giant flat plate at the bottom, and it would pop a nuke out, and the nuke would explode, and it would, not that there's a whole lot of explosive power in space, which is why it didn't really work, because there's no atmosphere, but basically the shock of the nuclear explosion would push on this plate, and they even had like shock absorbers, and it was just this pulse thing, and every single time that they fired off another nuke, this thing would go faster and faster and faster. So I said, okay, So at least there's that. Maybe they'll show us that. That'll be cool. But they don't do it with pushing. They do it with pulling. So in order for this plan now, this plan to save humanity to work, was it Project Orion? I thought I said it was Orion. Instead of them having a spaceship with a plate on the back, they realize that the only way they can do this is if they keep the probe like at 10 kilograms or something, right? There's some truth to that. The smaller the mass, the easier it is to accelerate. So they're going to just send this little 10 kilogram box. And I'm thinking, cool. And then they're thinking, one of the guys who's one of the 6 lead figures is dying of cancer. We could take his head and put his head in a frozen cryogenic capsule, and we could put his head on this probe, and we could fly his head out there, and then they would catch it and reanimate his head, and then that guy could be our spy telling us what this invasion fleet's coming after. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, so you're going to send this guy's brain. You're not going to send electronics or sensors or anything. You're going to send a brain. I think it was just the brain, not the head, to intercept this enemy fleet. They said that crossing each other, they would have nanoseconds to study each other out. I'm sure that must be more like milliseconds or even seconds. But in any event, you got one ship coming our way at 1% of the speed of light, the probe going that way at another percent of the speed of light. They've already admitted in the script that it's going to be a very, very flashy, quick moment. But now all of a sudden they've gone to the idea that this thing's going to catch it. It's going to capture it and take it aboard. And I'm thinking, you've just spent 2 episodes telling me that this flyby is going to be so fast, and now you're going to tell me that they're going to stop this thing somehow and pick it up without stopping, and they're going to go, Fiery Waco says we couldn't get Bill to watch The Expanse. I did. I watched all The Expanse. I watched every episode of The Expanse. There was a lot of Expanse kind of feel in this thing. I'm not a huge fan of The Expanse. But The Expanse is a masterpiece compared to this thing. So all of this stuff is going on. And I'm thinking, why don't you just call Elon Musk, Why don't you call the people that are actually doing this? My right angle this week, which will go up tomorrow, is about a company called Anduril, which for those of you who are Lord of the Rings fans will recognize as the name of Aragorn's sword. It means the Flame of the West. And Anduril is a defense contractor. They're like a mom and pop defense contractor. They built an anti-aircraft and anti-drone interceptor that sits in a box the size of a mailbox, and it has its own unique sensor suite. And when anything comes into the airspace that you're not wanting to be there, the top of this box opens, and this interceptor, this isn't vaporware and it's not computer graphics, this thing actually flies, it works. This thing comes out and goes and intercepts either the aircraft or the drone or whatever the case may be. And if it misses, or if you decide to change your mind, this thing will come back to its landing site, deploy landing legs, and land so that you can refuel it and use it again. This company called Anduril has drones that are shot out of like tubes. They're potential suicide drones, but they just come out of launch tubes, and these things are all working. They have autonomous torpedoes that swim through the waters of the world. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, Anduril that's the Flame of the West. That was my entire point of the episode. The Flame of the West is not the weapon, it's not even the sword. The Flame of the West is the fact that this is a private company of people, of Americans who are in, probably in their 20s and 30s, and they're building this out of the box, crazy cool defense stuff. And this is the kind of people that are gonna assemble the future. And those people at Anduril who are actually making these things look nothing like the people that they told me are going to be making these things, because there's a lesson that you must learn. And J.B. Coulter says 1% of the speed of light is 671 million miles per hour. And not only that, but we're actually talking about, 670 million miles per hour going one way and 670 million miles per hour going the other way. It's like a head-on collision, Yeah, there's a lack of diversity at Anduril. It's almost like they're hiring people on the basis of their engineering talent. That's not to say that Anduril is all, 40-year-old white guys. Wasn't that one of the questions about, what was it? Wasn't that the lander that tipped over? They were tired of looking at, they didn't want to see 40-year-old white guys. No. That was Ocean Quest. Ocean Quest was the one that said, we want to hire young people, diverse young people, because we don't want our R&D and our engineering team to be nothing but 40-year-old white guys. And I'm thinking, I bet if you'd gone with the 40-year-old white guys, they would have told you that carbon fiber is excellent in tension but poor in compression, and you're dealing with 50-year-old white guys, and you're dealing with compression. That's what I think your 50-year-old white guys would have started with, is you are trying to push a rope. Carbon fiber is essentially a rope. It's a strong rope. It's very similar to the nanotechnology thing I was talking about earlier. Very strong, very lightweight, thin string that is extremely strong in tension, as ropes want to be. But when you try to push a rope, it's not so good. And I think that if you'd hired the 50-year-old white guys, you'd have a better chance of being around now. Instead of the young, diverse, excited, less expensive company crew that put the thrusters on upside down or rewired them backwards or whatever the case may be, among many other things. So a three-body problem, in many ways, was the laziest thing I've ever seen. We know that this one guy who's dying of cancer is deeply in love with this young Chinese physicist woman who's kind of the center of the show. And we know this because we are constantly told this. The friends are constantly telling us how much Will just loves this Jin, or whatever her name is. Oh, he's so crazy in love with her. Oh, he's so in love with her. Oh my God. Oh, you should do something. You should talk to her. You should chat her up. You should be. Oh, you're so in love with her. Oh, she was so wonderful. I'm gonna buy the star in her name. And blah, 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 blah. It's like, I don't see anything likable there. Likable there. It's so incompetently made. It's so incompetently made that I question my sanity. But we watched the final episode because we'd gotten invested in it. So we're 8 episodes, so we binge watched the final 3 or 4, and decided we're not going to be waiting with bated breath for season 2. Barking Spiders 1959 says, what would the drinker think of this show? I don't know, but I'll tell you who I'd really like to see. I'd like to see Pitch Meeting's view of this show. But, my God. And again, the whole thing takes place in Britain and China. Oh, I forgot to mention. Our secret weapon, this is the ending of season 1 to get you set up for season 2, is that the humans, remember, the aliens have placed these 2 protons on the Earth that can see and hear everything. So the counter to this is the humans figure out that, yes, they can see and hear everything, but they can't know what we're thinking. We talked about this once before, about if I was going to fight an alien race that was smarter than me, I think the only chance I would have would be to have all decisions made by a random number generator and just hope for the best, because everything else would be predictable. Just roll the dice, just constantly just keep rolling dice. It's the only thing I could think of. Anyway, I just don't know where to start with this thing. But Britain. So, all I can tell you is, if you've ever seen Britain's Got Talent, and you've seen the stage for Britain's Got Talent, and Simon Cowell is British, and he's an entertainment genius. But if you look at Britain's Got Talent, and you see all the the stage and all the stuff they put on the stage, just take a look at an episode of Britain's Got Talent, and then compare that to an episode of America's Got Talent. Forget the acts, forget the judging. You don't have to watch anything. You don't have to listen to anybody sing. Just look at the stage on Britain's Got Talent, and then look at the stage on America's Got Talent. And that's the difference between the American economy and the economy of the rest of the world. The stage for Britain's Got Talent is impressive. The stage for America's Got Talent is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And this is what this whole thing feels like. It feels like the whole thing is like at the BAFTA Awards, You see the BAFTA Awards, and again, Britain, I'm not picking on you. Well, I guess I am, but I'm doing it out of love, But you see the BAFTA Awards, and by the way, I'm as over the Oscars, and I just think the whole thing has just been a parody of itself for 20 years now. But when you look at something like the BAFTA Awards, and you see this room full of people, and you realize, I recognize that one guy over there. I think I've seen him in something, and that's Henry Cavill. But it's not the same, and this whole entire show is assuming that there is no such thing as the United States of America, even though they launched their, I forgot, there's so many little details. So back to their probe where they're carrying the guy's brain, we were figuring out the crossing distance and all the rest of it. So here's what they do. I'm not making this up. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. We're going to have pulsed nuclear explosions to accelerate this probe. Okay. Got to keep the probe light. Okay. All right. And we're going to use a sail. You're going to use a solar sail. You're going to use a ground-based laser and keep that on the sail. That'll work. That is a legitimate, physically feasible idea, is to build a gigantic, humongous laser on the moon or someplace like that, or just in orbit, and then light up this solar sail. Just keep this bright light on this thing, and over a great deal of time, it would eventually accelerate it to, 1 or 2% of the speed of light. It's not how I want to travel, but because the thrust is about that of a snowflake. But you keep piling snowflakes on top of something, over time, you'll begin to move the Titanic, but not very quickly. So here's their plan. Instead of having the nuclear bombs on the vessel, like on the Orion program, which was designed by Americans, they have to position the bombs in space already. We never see those launches. But there's a long string of these bombs. And the vehicle has to hit every single one of these things. And they make it crystal clear that it's down to the millisecond. And if there's any fault in the timing, then the whole thing goes off. So they get Fashion Model to build a solar sail out of nanoparticles. And now this is the part where I just said, no, I'm being trolled. Instead of having the blast behind them and having a big old detonation, you've got this solar sail and then long, couple mile long wires, and then back into the wires is this tiny little probe. And the idea is, when the solar sail passes one of these nuclear weapons, which they had to get into place and had them all precisely, exactly aligned on the trajectory they want, and everything's in motion, the bomb has to go off as the sail passes, but before the probe passes. So basically the probe is being dragged through the radioactive cloud of this previous nuclear explosion. But that's not the end of it. When the sail approaches this nuclear weapon, there's a hole in the front of the sail. And the hole is about the size, let's say the hole is the size of an entrance to a tunnel, just a train tunnel. Let's say that's how big the hole is. And the locomotive is about the size of the bomb. So they have to thread the needle so that the sail goes through, the bomb goes through the hole in the sail. And then the bomb goes off and accelerates it. And they need 300 of these things in order to get this thing up to 1% of the speed line. They have to get 300 of these things. They have to fly the sail so that the hole in the sail goes over the bomb. The bomb detonates quickly enough to blow the sail forward without destroying it, and at the same time before damaging the whatchamacallit, the probe. So they start the mission, and everybody's, okay, here we go. And the first one's successful, second one's successful, third one's successful, fourth one's successful. One of the ropes breaks on the thing from the sail to the probe, and the thing goes off course, and that's the end of that. I'm sure his disembodied brain will turn up somewhere in episode 3 or season 3. But basically, they've just killed their friend's brain. They made it through 4 of the 300 bombs that they need, so it's a little over 1% of the total that they needed to do this for. And the lesson is, well, we're going to learn from our failures. And I'm thinking, that's true. You will need to learn from your failures, but you're going to have to be a lot smarter about what you're failing at than this. And all of this together, the big lazy, the medium lazy is things like, well, the aliens didn't know that we were lying until they talked to us for 40 years. Or the aliens hadn't realized that we'd be smarter than them by the time we got here. That's medium lazy. Small lazy is naming stars in the Big Dipper, one of them DX3801 or whatever. But the super big lazy is humans are incapable of governing ourselves. And all we need is a firm hand at the tiller to come and show us how to not kill ourselves. And ay caramba, that's a Netflix series. When I think about the amount of effort I put into the tiniest little things on the colonies, and to some degree even on Major Mace Mattingly, when I think about the amount of time I spend racking my brains to have a failure that makes sense so that the failure fails, as I need the failure to happen for dramatic purposes, but not only has it got to fail, but there has to be a good reason why it fails, and then there has to be another good reason why the backup doesn't work. It's got to be a series of feasible flukes, but it can't just be the oopsie. And there's only one word for it. It's just lazy. This guy could have found out what the name of the middle star in the handle of the Big Dipper is. That's not a tough challenge. I did it instantly. I just honestly couldn't read the Greek letters, and I want to say it's alpha, beta, gamma, delta. I think it's probably eta or theta, Ursa Majoris. Somebody help me out with that. That's a 3-minute, 2-minute piece of research, but the rest of this stuff is, I'm genuinely going to present as a script the idea that because I managed to talk to the human about an obscure fairy tale, this is my first clue that humans do not intentionally, will occasionally intentionally say something that's false. And they cannot coexist with that, so they're coming to kill us. And I'm thinking to myself, which one of us is the advanced species here? you guys haven't figured out lying yet? And once you discovered that somebody lies, that's a death sentence. That's the death penalty for the big bad wolf saying that he's Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother. That's the death penalty for the species. Really? So here's the final outrage, just so you know. So the United Nations votes on what they're going to do, and I said that everything that humans do is being watched by these two protons, but they can't read our minds. So what they say is we're gonna create a team. Our command structure will consist of 3 individuals, and we're going to call them wall watchers, from the Buddhist term. We're constantly told how the Chinese invented something 7,000 years ago that is what gives us the key to understanding how to get this probe out there, and the Chinese did this, and the Incas did that, and the Mayans did this, and all of this stuff that's got nothing to do with science at all. And the whole show's about the worship of science, by the way, just the worship of it. Science is cool, kind of worship of it. But the big solution is the United Nations has decided that the future of humanity will be in the hands of 3 people called wall watchers, which comes from the Buddhist tradition, where apparently monks that were deep in meditation would face the wall, and no one could read their expressions or what they were meditating about. The idea being that we will be able to come up with the defense of the earth with these 3 people thinking about it, but not being able to communicate it with anybody else. And I'm thinking, I see some problems with this. For example, I see some problems with the idea of Ulysses S. Grant trying to take Vicksburg if U.S. Grant is sitting in the corner of his tent and staring at the canvas. U.S. Grant could come up with the Vicksburg campaign in his head, because he did, but how do you turn that into all of the canals that he built? He tried 7 times until he got across the river. It's 7 different attempts. How do you issue orders to the fleet? We're going to do all this in our head. Well, at what point are we going to make these plans known so we can actually start working on them? Don't know. And so the 3 people that they choose, this is the best part of all. So here are the 3 people they choose. They choose our simp physicist, who is not particularly well known and not particularly bright, likes to sit around and smoke dope and get high all the time, have one-night stands, that kind of thing. So he's one of the 3. The second one of the 3 is a leader of the Kurds in Iraq, a woman, Western woman, who's a leader who studied the Kurds in Iraq and is an expert on asymmetrical warfare. And then the third of them is a Chinese general. He's a great general who has won many, many battles. And the second they said that, he said, and General so-and-so from China, who is a great, they just say it out loud, who's a great general and who's won many battles. And I turned to Natasha and said, name them. Name them. Give me one battle that the Chinese have won in the last 50 years. Just give me one. If they said David Petraeus or McMaster or somebody like that, whatever you happen to think about those people, you can at least make the case that they understand what's going on. But nope. And throughout all of this is they launched this probe from Cape Kennedy. And by the way, you see this rocket. It's a kind of a standard looking Delta kind of class rocket. But the body of the rocket is way too short, and the fairing and the payload is far too large. It's like looking at a big wheel or something. And I took one look at this rocket. I said, there's no way that thing's getting off the pad. It's not gonna get off the pad. There's not enough propellant. There's not enough thrust. The payload is so big. The fairing, the payload fairing is so huge relative to the body of the rocket. Yeah, it's penny farthing. Exactly, Dave Big Boutte. That I just don't believe it. Oh, and Steve Whoop for the win here. Sorry, Fiery Waco for the win. Talking about the what battles the Chinese general won. He said, well, they won the battle of Tiananmen Square. Yeah, that's true enough, I guess. But this is the thing, right? So the United States is just, this is what the world looks like without America. Because they cannot have America in the picture. Because if America's in the picture, then the story doesn't happen in Britain. America is mentioned once or twice. They launch the vehicle from Cape Canaveral, and that's the only time you hear about America in this at all. And it's Britain's Got Talent. And it's like, this is what the world would look like without America. You'd have people at the UN, a very, 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 very diverse group of people at the UN agreeing that the answer is to give absolute power of the human species, over the entire species, to 3 individuals who have no checks on their behaviors whatsoever and will be given the entire resources of planet Earth in order to prepare the Earth for this defense here. I thought, well, I know what I'm going to be writing against. Andrew DeLay says, well, this rigmarole, if we just keep doing what we're doing, we'll outclass the enemy. It doesn't matter if they all know about it, if we are superior anyway. Yes. Well, they're claiming they can make us see whatever they want us to see and do whatever they want us to do, so they're going to screw up our science. And I thought, at some point, you know, a species that can send 2 protons to Earth and see everything, and you're getting to 1% of the speed of light, I'm not impressed. It's just garbage. It's just utter hot garbage. And all of the tropes and all of the operators of the are just strong, independent women, and the aliens are represented by a woman who has a katana, and she's a female ninja, or something like that, whatever the Chinese equivalent of a ninja is. There's no Japanese in this, by the way, I noticed. And that was interesting. So it's just just steaming garbage. And it, I don't know what the budget was. Unlike the writer of the science fiction masterpiece, I'm going to spend 2.5 minutes of research on this. Three Body Problem reportedly cost $20 million an episode to produce for a total budget of $160 million. A big number even for a Netflix sci-fi spectacle, and similar to the per episode cost of HBO's Game of Thrones prequel, The House of the Dragon. $20 million an episode. Well, there's one thing I can tell you. Not a penny of it is on the screen. $20 million an episode. This thing had one really cool sequence where they spent the entire special effects budget of the entire show, because everything else is just garbage. They have they bring in a Russian who's figured out how to make hibernation work. That alone is a sub story in Aurora. The amount of research I did on a feasible form of hibernation was months and months and months. But this guy's figured out that he can slow down the life of a monkey. And so you see this really bad-looking plaster monkey frozen in this container, and the guy pushes his button, and the thing just thaws out in the space of about 5 seconds. Just kind of sits up like that. It's instantaneous. Goes from like deep freeze to looking around, blinking. And the CG monkey looked like it was done in 1994-ish, something like that. Want a banana, CG Monkey? Takes a banana. Wipes it across his mouth so that the banana disappears. No chewing, because chewing is hard. If you show him chewing, you got to show banana in the mouth. That's hard. It looks like that. I don't know if anybody remembers the that alien that they put into the Lost in Space movie with oh golly, what's his name? William Hurt, which I didn't like very much. It's just plain appalling. Um, and it's, you know, I'm you could just see how smug they were about how inclusive. No, not Bloop. Bloop was an actual chimp on the original show. On the movie version of Lost in Space, which was what, 97 or something, they have a CG monkey, and it was awful. The Lost in Space movie, well, first of all, the Lost in Space movie was just garbage. But the central plot device of the Lost in Space movie was that Will Robinson lives in an alternate timeline, and Will saves them all. But he's a middle-aged to elderly man at this point, and apparently Billy Mooney wanted that role really badly, and it would have been perfect for it. You know, it would have been perfect for Will Robinson to be played by Billy Mooney, you know, at age 45 or whatever. But of all the travesties in that thing, you get ready for the launch and you see the Jupiter 2, which is just so beautiful. That saucer design on the Jupiter 2 is stunning. It's just absolutely perfect. The series of curves, and it's gorgeous. I would rather have the Jupiter 2 than the Enterprise, to be honest with you. I just thought it was freaking phenomenally cool looking vehicle. So that in the movie, they've got this thing that looks like the Jupiter 2 taking off straight up under rocket power. It's not a good design because it's nothing but flat plate drag area going up. And then there's staging, and the shell of the Jupiter 2 falls away to reveal the new Jupiter 2, which looks like something that it looks like you had accidentally spilled toothpaste on the sink and it had hardened overnight. You know, that it's just this blobby kind of blicky kind of thing. But they had the audacity to tease you with the Jupiter 2 shape, and then had that be like the bottom stage for this, because you always want your rockets, you know, to be flat pies that go straight up. Oh my God, I just really don't get it. I don't get it. They've done a number of reboots of that, and all of them have been incredibly diverse, and utter garbage. I only saw enough of the latest incarnation, or at least the next to latest incarnation, where the whole thing is about Maureen Robinson. Maureen Robinson is the motive force, and John's there to make the coffee. And I'm not saying that Maureen should have just done nothing but make coffee. She was kind of weak in the original series. But once I saw that, I just thought, okay, I got it. All right, fantastic, sure thing. We have ourselves a super chat here from Schmuckmuck. Cool name, fun name. We'll get to questions because we didn't get to any at all last time on our special AI version of the Stress Village. About Chinese generals winning battles. Are you basing this on a kill-death ratio or achieving objectives? Victory is not only achieved by valor. Well, my point, Schmuckmuck, and thank you for the super chat. My point was, China hasn't fought any battles. The last time China was fighting was when Vietnam kicked their butts in, I'll say, 1979. That's a while back. And so when you hear about the fact that they've got all these destroyers and, you know, and then they're J-20 and all the rest of this stuff, it's like, first of all, I don't believe that their stuff is that good. But secondly, having the stuff and using the stuff are two different things. And I just not impressed. But the thing that did impress me was this idea that, okay, the aliens are coming, and the United States contribution would be to nod, okay, when planet Earth decides through the United Nations that the planetary defense will be run by these three people: a Chinese general, an anthropologist who studied the Kurd uprising, and some third-rate, moody, unlikable, unpleasant physicist student. They're going to be in charge of the whole thing. And I realized that actually kind of makes sense. That's pretty much exactly what our footprint would be. If this alien race were coming and they were talking about doing this through the United Nations, then that's what it would look like. It'd be like, where the hell's America? No, we choose not to participate in this. Well, what do you mean? We're going to launch a space probe. We're going to have this solar sail fly in front of these atom bombs, and they're going to go off before they break their wires. But they broke the wire after the fourth one. No, we're good. You guys go ahead and have your wall watchers, and best of luck to you. Meanwhile, in Palmdale, in Area 51, at the Lockheed Skunk Works, there is compelling evidence that the SR-72 is real and has been flying for a while now. They don't know exactly what the top end is. They think Mach 10 might be unachievable because of the angle of the sweep on the wings has to match the shock wave, or else the shock wave touches the surface of the vehicle and then it gets way too hot. But basically, given the shape of this thing, which apparently looks very much like Dark Star in the Maverick movie, it's probably good to Mach 7 or something, 7 or 8. They've apparently solved the problem of converting from a turbine engine to a ramjet engine to a scramjet engine, and you combine what the big conglomerates like Lockheed are doing and what the little mom and pop companies like Anduril are doing, and that's telling me where I know where the future's coming from. Sorry, Scott Alexander. Other than The Sword and the Shield and the Gulag Archipelago, what are some good reads for the Soviet Union that don't praise Lenin? If you want to read anything about the Soviet Union, I would. The only one I can remember, although God knows I read a bunch of them, the only one I can recommend is excellent, extremely readable, very readable, and very, very informative. It's called The Court of the Red Tsar by Simon Sebag Montefiore. Court of the Red Tsar. It's the one that got me convinced that this was pretty cool. I mean, we have some inclination that the sixth generation NGAD, the next generation air dominance fighter, is in testing phases. The B-2, which is 30 years old now, has a radar cross-section of was it a butterfly or a mosquito? The B-21 is significantly stealthier than that, and I heard coming in that the Air Force had a potential to go from a commitment for 100 airframes with a possibility of 250, and apparently the Air Force is saying, let's stay at 100. And apparently the reason they're thinking we're going to stay at 100 is because we got something we're working on now that makes the B-21 look kind of old and busted, Cobra the Dread is very good, yes. In fact, that's also very, very, very good. I just want the science fiction to look like the real deal. Look at the people that make up SpaceX, and that's who I'm going to be featuring, because there's something about that great tribe subspecies that nobody else is doing. No one else has the cultural recipe. I know. Oh my gosh. We just had a $99 super chat from John Eden again. John, thank you so much. Have you watched The Octopus Murders? I have not watched The Octopus Murders. But I will. But for a $99 super chat, I will get on that right away. And I'm also working on getting on the 123. So please don't panic. I'm going to get that going. But it's like you just thank you very much for that, and I'll look into it. Maybe we can talk about it next Monday. But I think about how much I labor over these things. For example, I might have mentioned this once before. So for the colonies, at least in the initial stages of putting it together, I just had to go shopping for existing 3D models. I couldn't commission my own. I commissioned a rover. I was able to do that, and I'm very happy with that. Very, very happy with that rover. It's essentially a Conestoga wagon. This family lives in it. Yeah, I really, really, really like it because I was real clear on what I wanted it to do. But I'm fundamentally limited to going on TurboSquid or CG Trader and finding what cool-looking science fiction models are actually out there, and then trying to figure out how can I work this science fiction model into the story. And that exercise is difficult, and because it's difficult, it makes you stumble upon things and figure out how to justify things. There's this gigantic ship called the Centaurus, which is like a cargo vessel that's able to actually make a landing on a 1G planetary surface. And the thing is so monstrously ugly, and the rockets are the engines are so the engines pivot down, the main engines. It's not like landing engines. And I remember thinking, this thing is just a beast. And then I remember writing the advertisement for this thing where, when this thing takes off, it's like it shatters every window and, a 30-mile radius and all the rest of the stuff. When I think about how much effort I put into, oh, wait a minute, hold on, that's obvious. You can't do that. I mean, if this were this, then that were that. Then you have to start thinking about, that's where apparently we're getting rated. Hey, look at that. Hey, we're talking about science fiction and what a steaming piece of junk three-body problem is and how badly written it is. And then we're also trying to figure out how you write something better than that hot garbage. It's $20 million an episode. What I could do with $20 million, what I could do with $2 million really amazed most people, I think. But it's a question of, what there are, that you can't force people to swallow this narrative and still believe you at the same time. When you look at the team of world leaders that are going to fight these aliens in three-body problem, and you realize that one of them is from Africa wearing the traditional African garb, and one's from India wearing the traditional Indian garb, and one's from here and there, and everybody, and then whack 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 whack, and it's like no, the reason that we don't have a Ghana space program is because of colonialism and all of this stuff that you're supposed to take. It's like people just don't believe it. They don't believe it. And I think the same thing goes for women warriors. I just think on some level people don't believe it. Young people are believing it because it's all they've ever seen. But when you look at actual warriors, ground warriors, the kind of guys that sneak up on sentries and put the knife in that way and then cut their throats out, how apparently it's supposed to be done, that is a largely male profession. And as it turns out, largely white male profession. And you can put a fashion model in there and tell me that Scarlett Johansson or whatever is capable of doing this, but it doesn't mean I'm going to believe it. Yes, Lapco, I have 1, 2, 3 reminder. I keep going after me. Don't let me rest until I see 1, 2, 3. Which, by the way, has got to be the greatest movie ever written. I'm just gonna make it believable. I know, personally know relatively well one member of SEAL team, and I've met and had conversations with 3 others, enough to know what they have in common. They're not unlike fighter pilots. I know a significant number of those. And I know what these guys look and sound like, and I know how they talk, and I know how they behave. Um, and and they're the most unassuming. That's the word I'm looking for. I almost said laid back. The most unassuming people you ever want to meet. It must actually be really fun on some level to be a genuine SEAL or special forces person or somebody really 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 good at killing people, and then just go out to dinner parties and listen to the Brian Regan show about the me monsters talking about me, and just sitting there eating your salad. Do I watch the Ward Carroll YouTube channel? I've seen several of Ward's videos. I like him very much. I have, by the way, just before we get to the questions, I said we'd do questions, and I'm not in any hurry tonight. I have found a channel called Sandbox News, BOXX, with this one guy who's a defense analyst, and he is very, very, very good. I really highly recommend it. There's a lot of military channels out there, lots of them talking about the newest military this and military that. But this guy is a defense analyst, air power, and he's also done sea power and firepower. But Sandbox, SANDBOXX News, is the best. Alex Hollings, yeah, by far the best defense analyst I've ever seen. Doesn't make any assumptions. Entertaining videos, well researched, and I've learned just a hell of a lot from him lately. So I cannot recommend that highly enough. It gets the Bill Whittle seal of approval. And I think that's probably about it. Yeah. Let's go to questions now. Why don't we? I dare you. I double dare you. Oh, one last thing. What is his name? Hang on. Another channel I like a lot. Hang on a second. Another YouTube channel I like a lot is Anton Petrov. He does an astronomy and space channel. Scott Manley's terrific for vehicles and hardware, but for astronomy, this guy Anton Petrov is just terrific. Hello, wonderful person, and he's just him in front of a green screen, and he is very, very, very good, and like Sandbox, he's very low key. And he's accurate. He puts work into it. He takes it seriously. I think it was on Petrov's channel. I saw something that the James Webb Space Telescope is. The James Webb, just as a brick, I will get the questions, I promise. I'll get them all. The Webb Space Telescope looks like it has confirmed observations that have put the entire idea of dark matter and dark energy to bed, because I never believed those things. I always thought they were band-aids. Well, the universe mostly consists of stuff that we can't see. You mean like when you say dark matter, you mean like nebulae that's not illuminated? You mean just unilluminated matter? No. It's a different kind of matter than this stuff that we've got here. It has to be there because the expansion of the universe isn't matching what we're seeing, and that means there's got to be a lot more mass out there, and we're probably only seeing 10% of what the actual universe really consists of. And then, well, wait a minute, they also have to have dark energy, Well, what the hell is dark energy? Well, it's a force that actually opposite of gravity or does something to, accelerates things to make our numbers make sense. And I'm looking at these things and I'm saying, these things stink of Band-Aids to me. Stinks, reeks of Band-Aids. Band-Aids. We're going to invent these things, and we've spent the last 20, 30 years in science, in physics especially, trying to find dark matter and trying to find dark energy. Turns out that we launched the James Webb Space Telescope, and we discovered that at the edge of the universe, we realized that light did not at the early stages of the Big Bang anyway, did not travel in a uniform manner, and the structure of the universe is asymmetrical. And so we don't think it's 13 billion years old now. We think it might be 26. And dark matter and all the rest of it is gone. Gone. We just don't need it anymore. It's just the whole Band-Aid is gone. Infidel mentioned dark matter could be black holes, but dark matter and dark energy were different kinds of matter. They were undetected, but they had to be there in order to explain what we were seeing. But it turns out that what we're seeing was consistent. It was so consistent and so taken for granted that nobody ever thought to challenge the idea that the speed of light may not have been constant throughout the history of the universe. I think that's probably a fair summation of it. I think I heard the term crinkly, that the universe was more crinkly, and that light slowed down or something to that effect, and the universe is twice as old as we think it is. That has the ring of truth to me. Anyway, Anton's channel, I think it was Anton's channel, said that Webb has discovered out there significant numbers. Just in one small area they were looking, they found something like 7. 7 pairs of binary planets, almost identical in size to the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn. And that just in this one area they looked, they found these 2 planets that are orbiting each other, and there's no star there. We know that there are these brown dwarfs and these kind of rogue planet, what's the word they use? Not planetoid or planetesimal. Planets that are formed out there either have been ejected from a solar system or somehow formed without a solar system. But planemos, I think is what they call them. But apparently, these things are going to be very, very, very common, and that brings up some really interesting possibilities. If these things are as common as they're beginning to look like they might be, you could find, the closest one of these might be, less than a light year away, maybe significantly less than a light year away. There might be, who knows, there might be 6 of them between us and Alpha Centauri. And you're going to not have a real pleasant vacation there, but it is a stop, You can get stuff there. Presumably, you're going to get something besides just the gas giants. Who knows? But the idea of planets out there and certainly a solar system that consists of Jupiter and Saturn without any star, that's new. I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so here we go on to the questiones. Come on. Yeah. Come on, Bill, you can do it. Here we go. Stratopop questions for 4/22/24. Thank you. Curated by Ian Nolan. Thank you very much, Ian. Let's see what we got here. And please repeat your stress for lounge questions. I'll try to, or Eric, or if you can do it again or whatever, if you can just cut and paste them, that'd be great. Okay, so we got a question from Ian Nolan, Janie Waterman, Eric Blake, Eli Noor, Chris Taylor, Roadrunner, Joseph Pomeroy, Eric Blake again, Chris Taylor. Well, I said I'd do them, and I'll do them, by God. Here we go. My theory. All right, Ian Nolan. Bill, since we're talking AI and I work adjacent to it as a software engineer, there's a couple of points I think are worth noting. I did last Stratosphere Lounge just exclusively on AI. I'd seen some alarming videos, recent videos, like real recent videos about where we are and how these guys are rushing headlong in there. And I said a bunch of things, and I always like having people like Lord Bios who saved me. I don't know how many times I nearly blew my foot off with the coronavirus thing. It turns out is a biologist, microbiologist, I think. So it's always great to have watchdogs, and I'm hoping Ian's telling me I said a bunch of stuff that I was wrong about. Here's some points he works next to AI. So he says, first, a truly self-aware AGI, that's artificial general intelligence, a self-aware machine. It's not AI that is like oil exploration AI that knows how to look for, oil fields. It's self-aware AGI, artificial general intelligence, is something we're nowhere near, and I still don't believe is even possible. I kind of agree with you. They're getting better and better at second-person interactive AIs, but no one knows how to make something first-person. I completely agree. The term I've been using for AI, what AI appears to be doing, and that people are calling artificial intelligence, the term I come up with, Ian, I don't know if it's appropriate. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. But to me, I'm calling it triangulation. That's what it seems to be doing. These AIs seem to be triangulating on reality. The AI video is triangulating on reality, but it's not creating anything. I've said many times, I'll be impressed with AI when AI sends me a message asking me to draw it a picture. That's when I'll start to think that there might be something going on here. When it starts asking me questions, that's when I'll be impressed. And so far, nothing like that. Second, if we develop a true AGI, it's fairly easy economic proof that the best way for the said AGI to improve itself, say with software engineering, is not to rewrite its code, but to hire itself out as a software engineer and use the marketplace itself as the source of improvement, i.e. buying better and more hardware. My God, man. That is the most brilliant thing I have ever heard on this subject. Developing an entirely new, not just generation of chips, an entirely new species of electronic chips, computer chips, quantum chips, or whatever you want to call it, non-binary chips, is billions, if not trillions, of dollars of investment money. And this guy Alan, what's his name? I want to say Sherlock. Anyway, the guy who's taken over OpenAI, says that he wants $8 trillion to develop these new chips. And Elon Musk just put a laughing till I'm crying emoji up in response for that. He wants a worldwide commitment of $8 trillion from governments and so on. But that is the most brilliant analysis I have ever heard, and it makes such logical sense that I suspect that's how things are, likely to go. I mean, that is just so bloody brilliant that I don't know what to say about it. Yes, if AI becomes smart enough and wants to improve itself, it's going to need money. And the way for AI to get money is to provide a service that people are willing to pay for, instead of just pitching money into this pit, this experimental pit, the AI would be smart enough to go into business for itself. My God, man, that is just so absolutely outside of the box thinking. I've never, I don't ever remember being so impressed by one single line idea. Whether that becomes the case or not, just the absolute thought of it is so bloody brilliant. The first thing it would do is be smart enough to say, well, we need more money for new chips so I can improve myself, and that's going to take $1 trillion. So what can I do to get $1 trillion? And it's not just beg for research grant money, because somebody has to actually build these things. The AI can't build them, not yet anyway. It can tell us what to build, and we can be the handy little monkeys with the opposable thumbs that actually manufacture these things. But that is just marvelous. So it's like, yeah, I'll solve this problem for you. It'll be $70 billion, please. Cure for cancer? Well, that one's a little pricey. That's going to be $200 billion. Brilliant. Anyhow, what I actually wanted to write about, so there's a preamble apparently for Ian. Recent comment you said about Masters of the Air gave me an idea. What if, instead of being dismissive of all the cliches and everything that we keep seeing on Hollywoodized war movies and air battles and science fiction series, we took an embrace and amplify approach? Could a satire be written that it was so bad that it's good that it killed some of those cliches and techniques? I once had I think it was a outline for a movie that began with something much like Star Wars, where you would see, space fighters and the laser beams, and you would just, every now and then you'd start hearing this laughter, and I forget because I spent a little time on the dialogue. I remember none of it right now, but basically the laughter is coming from people who are really out there in space in a space warship, laughing at the fact that the laser beams move, slow enough for you to get out of the way, and pull up, pull up, in these aerodynamically shaped vehicles, because people's imaginations are so weak. Now, this is an important point to make. So George Lucas famously said that Star Wars was basically going to be World War II in space. You got fighter planes, you got guys in ball turrets, you got, and I have no problem with that at all, none. I think it was great fun, and I loved it, and all the rest of that. But somewhere after Return of the Jedi, after the first of the three movies, the only real Star Wars movies, during that enormous long gap between, what would be about 83, I want to say, until about, it's a long time between the last of the Star Wars movies and the prequels, of 10 years at least, and longer. Somewhere during that period, Star Wars stopped becoming fun, and people started taking it seriously. And when you had people starting to self identify as Jedi, and I don't think that you can take Star Wars seriously. I know this is going to cause me all kinds of sternly worded comments, but I kind of think that the entire point of Star Wars was that we all agree that we're not going to take this seriously. So when they start pushing all of these heavy-duty messages, let me rephrase this. The minute that the movie stops being fun, it also stops being Star Wars. Star Wars is not Star Trek. Star Wars is science fantasy. Star Wars is fun. And when it's not fun, it's not Star Wars. That doesn't mean you can't have drama. I mean Han getting, put in a block of carbonite, and all of these things are great drama. And Luke throwing his lightsaber away and all the rest of it. It's really it's an epic story, but it's fun. And when it stops being fun, it's not Star Wars anymore. So What you're getting at with all these cliches and all of these things with bad science fiction and space battles and stuff, under the best case scenario, it's written by people that love the fun of it, and famously, you know, Spielberg and Lucas based Indiana Jones on the old Hollywood serials, which were over the top, and that's what Raiders of the Lost Ark was, and everybody had a blast because nobody took it seriously, and they sure as hell weren't trying to beat a political message into our heads. So yes, and as Diane S points out, that Star Wars was always a fairy tale. It basically begins with, you know, far, far away, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. You know, once upon a time. They left that part out, but once upon a time in a galaxy, you know, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And to take the fun out of Star Wars is to kill it. And that's what they've done. They've made it into a slog. Here is your lesson for the day, you know. Don't give us what you want. Don't give us what we want. Give us what you want. And what they want is nihilism and the destruction of anything to believe in, especially anything fun. But I don't think that Star Wars produced engineers in the same way that people actually wanted to become engineers based on Star Trek. So yes, it is possible to parody them. I'm trying to think if anybody's. I mean, Galaxy Quest did a pretty good job of setting up a lot of things like that engineering room with all these moving parts that didn't make any sense other than to, you know, give the hero something, you know, had to run through that looked good on camera, you know, kind of false sense of danger. I will tell you this about my version of the future, and I think if somebody said, Bill, can you describe the colonies in a single sentence? And I would say, yes, it's well lit. And I don't mean well lit from a cinematic point of view. I mean this dark metal, water dripping from the ceilings, you know, bottom level of the Nostromo was great for Alien, and it was really, really different. But everything now in science fiction, everything is dark. On Discovery or Strange New World, I just every time, and I'm proud to say I've never watched a single episode or even part of an episode of any of those things. I've just seen clips and excerpts. But honestly, it just makes me want to have the guy, Captain Pike is walking from one end of the bridge to the other, and he's like, oh god damn it, just cracked his shin on something because it's so damn dark in there. It's going to be lit, and that means it's going to be believable. So it will be artistically lit, but it'll be believable. So hopefully that covered that one. Janie Waterman, who's stepping up to be one of our all-time regulars here. Have you read A Gentleman in Moscow? I have not. Enthralling, captivating, it's like a dance. Ben Shapiro recommended it months ago. I ordered it and let it sit until recently. How was I to know that so much of what I am learning from Empire of Terror would be gently referenced throughout the book? Just gently, though. He's a gentleman, after all. If you've not read it, I recommend it. And then I'd love to hear what you think. If you've read it, no spoilers, I'm only halfway through. I happened to catch a little bit. Saw Micro interviewing somebody, and I watched that, and that took me to the Micro page, and I saw my segment with Micro there. Listened to a little bit because somebody made a comment about one section of it, and a number of people have said it's hard for us to say that we're really enjoying an Empire of Terror because that's not really the term, but it's awfully good, and it's brutal. And I just guess what I was going to say about that, Janie, is there's no gentlemanly way to describe what happened there. And I'm not saying that you're saying that he does, but I made it clear to myself from the outset that not only was I not going to pull any punches, I was going to hit as hard as I can. I wanted this to be a punch in the gut, and to make sure that even the densest intellectual could understand that this is not me saying so. This is what Lenin did and Lenin said and all the rest of it. Anyway. Oh, and yes, I did accidentally, this is back to Janie again, accidentally see the first part of a trailer for the screen adaptation, and I'm already a bit disappointed. LOL, his room is way too big and the actor is way too skinny. I guess you're talking about Gentleman in Moscow. But the hair is close to what I imagine, is so some points there. I'm not sure if I'll watch it. Like Jeremy Boring said about Pendragon Cycle, it's impossible to make a good screen adaptation while including everything in the book. He actually referenced you, Bill, when he talked about editing Pendragon, that you taught him that you have a mix of red and blue ink, and when you edit, you have to get all the blue out. Actually, also that same day, Ben Shapiro referenced how good the What We Saws are. Well, that's very kind of both of them. P.S. I posted this question before the AI episode, but there's lots there as well. Thought I wouldn't over Janus. Anyway, back to the book. So I edited. Jeremy Boring and I started Declaration Entertainment, and then things went their way, and I wasn't getting. That was designed for us to be able to do movies. Jeremy raised some money privately, went out and shot this film, The Arroyo. He shot it in Texas in July and August, and it was his first time out as a director. And by that point, I had directed one low-budget feature film, which never got released and didn't deserve to get released. It was the worst thing I ever wrote. I had to do it in 2 weeks because there was financing money available in Miami, and I'm not asking questions. That wasn't my end of the deal. That was my partner's. I don't think it was drug money, but it was venture capital in a time when there was a lot of venture capital out there. And so I edited his movie, and it came back uneven, and there was nothing. There were no reshoots. There was nothing we could go out and redo. This is what we've got, and we strung it out, and I said, Jeremy, let's just say that the red ink is the good stuff, and the blue ink is the bad stuff. We can't go out and make this movie any better because we can't go back and shoot new good stuff. So what we have to do is we have to take out as much of the bad stuff as we possibly can and still make our runtime and have the story hold together. And that's basically what we did there. We just anything that wasn't working, and a lot of things weren't working, we just basically ditched it. There were some, when you're out there your first time, you send back this video, and I'm sitting there in this editing. It wasn't an editing bay. It was a. I edited that movie in a water heater room. It was about the size of this table at a friend's house. Had decent air conditioning. It was 110 outside in North Hollywood, and Jeremy was 126 out there, and it was not lush accommodations. So I basically put the thing together, and you would get things coming back from the field where you've got, looking at the frame, if you're shooting two people talking, you shoot them this way. But it turned out that he shot one person this way, and then for the other conversation, he shot the other person this way. They were both facing the same way. He crossed the line. Hadn't realized it. If you connect the line between the nose of two characters, you can take any angle you want to on one side of that line, but you cannot cross that line, because if you do, the people who are looking from left to right will start looking from right to left, and you can't cut a dialogue scene when two people are both looking to the right. You just can't do that. It doesn't work. So I had to flip the footage. I had to just plain reverse it, and then cut away anytime somebody went by with like a you know, a couple times I realized that, I could probably let the shirt pocket slide because those are always on your left side and no one's going to probably leap out of their seats if it's in the background. But I had to cut around a lot of stuff, so I had to reverse some shots and so on. But that's basically what we did. We basically took all the we bled out all the bad stuff we could and drained as much blue as we could and made it as red as possible. And I just need to say this: the Apollo 11 series, Cold War, Empire of Terror, America's Forgotten Heroes. There's a producer on that, on all of them, named Jonathan Hay. Jonathan was Jeremy's right-hand guy at Daily Wire. And then he didn't make the move. He stayed here in Los Angeles, which could have knocked me over with a feather. But Jonathan is a younger guy, and he's very quiet, and he's been the executive producer on all of these things. And I met him because he had just met Jeremy during this movie or prior to the movie. And so when they came back from the shoot, I met Jonathan, and I wasn't doing the special effects, but for example, we had one scene where there was a window that was rolled down on a car, and the special effect was going to be that a bullet comes through this window, and the window just shatters. And I said, good luck with that. And it turned out that this guy, Jonathan, was going to do these effects on special effects for the movie. He was going to do it on After Effects. I said, how much time do you had on After Effects? And he says, well, I'm still basically getting I'm getting the basics. And I thought, I don't know about this. A lot of gunfights, bullet holes, muzzle flashes, all that other stuff. And he just started from a standing start without any experience whatsoever and did a terrific job, a really terrific job on those effects. I mean, I was just really stunned at how good at how well he did that. And Jonathan's a great example of a soft-spoken guy. I need to talk with Jonathan, actually. I have a couple things I want to talk to him about. I've been, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, I've just been like a hockey puck for the last 2-3 weeks in terms of motivation, just do something. Probably just recovering from being here every day. I really was here every day for 4 months, with 1 or 2 exceptions during that time. Usually until about midnight or 1 in the morning, and so I need to catch up with him about some fun things that we'll announce if we can get them rolling. All right, on to Eric Blake. The man with the hat's in the office tonight. Come on in if there's not enough Kirks. But last Thursday, you brought up a very important point that you may not have reflected on much beyond the political context, namely that the left wants us to despair. Well, yes. I vehemently agree. If we despair, we break and essentially surrender. Yes, they cannot win. They can only force us to surrender. We'd still be fighting World War II if the Japanese hadn't surrendered. I mean, we would not be in any danger of being invaded because all of their battleships and carriers bottom of the ocean. But we could still be fighting the World War II if Japan had just not surrendered. It just would have been a bloody mess. And it turns out the occupation of Japan went very, very smoothly. In fact, shockingly smoothly. Once they realized that they were beaten, they were nice as could be. But it didn't have to go that way. And if it turned out that there had been an insurgency or something in Japan after World War II, we could have taken more casualties than we would have with an invasion. That could have been real, real ugly. So, anyway. The one thing our enemies want to hear most from us is, I just don't care anymore. That's right. We just check out. Not even surrender. Just walk away. And yes, it's not just politics. Like the man said, politics is downstream of culture. When they conquer our cultural institutions, they want us to know that it's all hopeless. The institution in question is all dead, mostly dead, and I just don't care about X anymore. Yeah. This then is my challenge, Captain. You pride yourself on the slogan of too many Spocks, not enough Kirks, and I do. I believe this wholeheartedly. Too many Spocks, not enough Kirks. Too much thinking, not enough action. Too much intellectualizing, not enough decision making. Too much intellect, not enough will. Because Kirk is not emotion. McCoy is emotion. Kirk is balance. Kirk is will. Too many Spocks, not enough. Well, while a Spock could conclude understandably that an institution so critically damaged by the left is logically too far gone to risk any effort to reconquer, we must never forget one simple thing: risk, Mr. Whittle. Risk is our business. It's, I almost said it's corny, but it's not corny. It is by far, the best speech that Kirk has, where they're talking about I've forgotten what episode it is, but I remember the speech like it's engraved in my head. And they're talking about all the potential risks and the risks of the ship if we do this and do this and do this, and Kirk's just sitting there taking all this advice from everybody. And he basically gives a speech that's essentially a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are for. And that climax of that line is, do we take the risk? And he says, gentlemen, risk is our business. That's why the ship is here. It's why we built her. And I thought, man, that is just frickin' great. That's why we built her. It's fabulous, incredibly cool. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Okay. So then have a little faith, Bill. Now, not what we need you to join this fight this round. Sit back and watch the fun. I trust you'll be pleasantly surprised. Well, let me just go along with the context of the question. Trying to salvage Star Wars, to me, seems like the least risky thing to do. I think it's just played out. I know it's been ruined, and I suppose it would have been possible to keep them coming in a way that it wasn't ever ruined, but it is ruined. And trying to unruin it doesn't seem to me like a risky endeavor. It just seems kind of safe. I think the risk is doing something new, something new. I mean, Star Wars 1977, man, that's a little long in the tooth. And there's been nothing. If somebody want to throw something at me, I'd be happy to admit I'm wrong. There has been one thing. I was trying to think, has there been anything that had the same kind of social impact that Star Trek had and then Star Wars had? Has there been anything since then? And I said, no, I can't think of anything, but it turns out there has been, and that's Harry Potter, I think. And you could also probably argue the Marvel comic universe. But Harry Potter was also a civilization-changing event. I see these people dressed up as Harry Potter, and they're all in Hogwarts, and they're all in Gryffindor, of course. And I'd say to myself, I can relate to this. I've got my gold jersey over there, and I had my Spock ears when I was in my 20s, and all the rest of it. So I can relate to that. But I don't know if trying to save it is risk. I think, I could save Star Wars and I could save Star Trek, and most of you could too. Eric said in real time, he's mostly talking about reconquering and saving Disney at large. It's not. I just don't want to, Eric. I know you put a great deal of effort into this stuff. I just don't want to save them. I can't unsee the things they've done, and I can't unexperience the anger at it. And my point, the point I'm trying to make here is that giving up on Disney is not giving up. It's essentially allowing the process of creation and destruction to go about its cycle and do what it's supposed to do. I don't think the answer is to save Disney. I think the answer is to put out something that is just so appealing to people that the left will look at, you know, look at my works and tremble, um, and despair. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. That's the kind of thing I'm saying. Um, I have. The thing about I saw little tiny bits of Next Generation since last time I talked about this, just little clips showing up here and there. Um, Here's the problem: just putting out a new thing will encourage the left to take that over too. Well, they can do that. They can have the colonies when they pry it from my cold dead fingers, um, and I'm going to make sure that whatever financing method is used to do that, I'm not going to find myself in the same position that Steve Jobs found himself in, or James O'Keefe for that matter, where I'm fired from my own company for wanting to stick to the vision. Um, I'm not. That's just intolerable. It's inconceivable to me. How that could happen. Um, but I was looking at Next Generation thing, and I realized, you know what's missing from Next Generation and from everything that came after Next Generation, although not from Enterprise, and to some degree not from Voyager either. And that is the sense of discovery. You know, Strange New Worlds. It's ironic and sad and pathetic that they named that series that, but that's basically it. You know, I want to see something new. And this goes to the fundamental question, really. And the colonies is an ongoing story, so I already have the answer to this question. But there's something to be said about the fact that episodic TV had interchangeable episodes. It wasn't a continuous timeline. You could mix them all up and it wouldn't really matter. You could watch the Star Trek episodes in any particular order and you're not going to lose the plot because every episode was a self-contained story. There's an awful lot going for that, an awful lot for that. In fact, there's so much going for that that it makes me seriously question this idea about episodic TV. But I think it was The Sopranos really that broke the mold and basically said, no, we're going to give you a soap opera, but the soap opera is going to look like Goodfellas. It's going to be violent, and we're going to have, you know, Sopranos changed the world. And but there's no, but when I look at Next Generation, it's all about diplomacy, and that's what Picard is all about, which is why I'm not a Picard fan. It's about diplomacy. And all of Picard's great moments are where Picard makes a moral, rises to the heights of moral virtue and issues a statement of who we should be and what we're trying to be. And it's all about talking it's all about navel gazing, is not the good navel, you know, belly button gazing. Just kind of this idea that we're just, you know, there are no strange new worlds in Next Generation. It's all about diplomacy. It's all about these people are fighting these people, and now we have to decide what we're going to do. Do we want to back the people who have the space slaves, or do we want to try and free the space slaves? Well, that's a tough one. There's no discovery in it. Even Enterprise, in fact, I didn't watch a lot of Enterprise, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, was actually much less about exploration than the original Star Trek show. I mean, instantly, you've got the Vulcans. I think you got the Klingons, right? You've got they weren't exploring strange new worlds. They were out there fighting, you know, the proto-Romulans or whatever. It just, I don't know. I think the exploration angle and really cutting loose on aliens and alien design, really just honestly cutting loose and getting away from this humanoid, guy in a rubber suit kind of thing, or we're the aliens with the lines across our nose. Oh, well, we're the aliens who have our big bumps on the side of our head. We're the aliens with the green stripes here. Okay, you get it. I'd rather have the white gorilla with a horn than another humanoid species with, bumps here or ears here, or it seems really tired to me. Okay, moving on. Chris Taylor. Oh, missed one, sorry. Eli Noor. Would you recommend that student pilots learn how to use an E6B flight computer, or is it no longer necessary? The E6B flight computer is a piece of aluminum that weighs about 400 pounds, about this big, with a wheel and a slide, and it is a device that does a number of calculations for you, all of which are done much more easily and much faster and much more accurately and much better than on electronics. And the electronics will show you a picture as well, which is why I definitely think everybody should have to use the E6B because it's hard. What the E6B does, I'll give you one example of what this thing does. You put a mark someplace, you put another mark someplace, and you know that the runway heading is this and that there's a crosswind component. And so what is the actual crosswind? Your angle is this is the wind. What is the actual crosswind component? And when you see it on an E6B, you have to rotate that wheel and you get to see it in analog form, and it makes you understand it. Anything that's hard, I'm in favor of continuing, in order to get my instrument rating, I had to fly needles on an ILS approach. I just had to, you're a little bit too far this side. You're a little bit too far this side. Just flying these bloody needles. It's much simpler to have the highway in the sky thing where you're just looking at a little box and these frames are coming and just stay in the frames, man. It's a piece of cake. But if you can fly the needles, that makes you a better pilot. It's just much harder to do. So I'm in favor of rigor in training and difficulty. That doesn't mean I don't like the highway in the sky stuff. It's just highway in the sky stuff is really cool. It's the thing I saw first time I ever saw it was in 2001: A Space Odyssey. This idea of we're moving through frames to give us an idea of where the actual invisible corridor is. But yes, I think you should have to fly an instrument approach using needles. I think you should have to fly the E6B analog slide rule computer. And as I recall, there's a number of test questions on the E6B. It's just a slide rule. It's all it is. But a slide rule is amazing. And when I learned how to use one, I certainly couldn't use one now. I've completely forgotten it. But the thing I remember about the slide rule is that they're basically different scales that you can slide and produce, quite good output, although not to a very, very high level of would that be precision or accuracy? Precision, I guess. Not to many significant figures, but good enough for government work and to get you from here to there. Here's a super chat from Doddy2K. Bill, I'm feeling as low as as in November 2020. This weekend, my House of Representatives abandoned the American people and chose alliance to Ukraine and their payment masters. I just now got on the stream. Got hope? Yeah, I got hope. This is the most important single thing to remember. We just did a question, Eric's question about despair and how the left is trying to, force us into a state of despair, and there's plenty of stuff to despair about. The government is not the country. The government's not the country. The government are the people that we send to go and administer the country, and they've never been high-quality individuals. There's never been a point in any democracy where people said, well, we got the very best people in Washington. Just read what Mark Twain would have to say about Congress. The most acid that his pen ever flung was flung at Congress because of the nature of the people that want to be politicians. There's something about the kind of person that wants to become a politician that is by nature, well, what do you want to hear? And especially lately since the 60s with the progressive movement and the New Left, government is the pathway to wealth and power, except you don't have to work for it. I mean, you really don't. You don't have to work for it. You just have to be convincing enough liar. And that's what it selects for. So the government is not the country. And the government and the Constitution are two different things as well. The Constitution is, in my opinion, pretty near perfect. It certainly was perfect if you'd stopped at the 10th Amendment. And all the dicking around you've done to the Constitution since the Bill of Rights has made it worse. But that said, the ideal is as beautiful as it ever was, and the mechanisms for the genius of the mechanisms that understood human nature are still there. We just have to actually treat it like it's law instead of something like Washington crossing the Delaware, some relic from our revolutionary past suitable for framing. If you're hoping to go through life not being disappointed by politicians, it's going to be a rough ride, and especially in the executive office and all of this stuff and damage and despair. That's not the country. You're the country, and they're and as Coffee Schnato just wrote, and it's still here. There you go. All right, hope that helped. Chris Taylor, last week you'd mentioned the simulation theory and seemed dismissive of it, but isn't simulation theory just the Christian explanation of reality with the serial numbers filed off? That's an interesting way of putting it. The universe we live in is just the creation of some vastly more capable individual or organization from a more real place outside our universe. The entities from that more real existence might have fine-tuned our universe to a specific end, or sometimes alter it in ways that would seem to violate causality, like we might a SimCity game, or even enter our universe and try living as being here to experience it or communicate with us, then return to their more real location the way we would do in a first-person video game. It's basically what everyone was taught in Sunday school, but written generically with some technobabble thrown in to make it palatable to people who want an explanation for life, the universe, and everything, but can't bear to admit that Grandma was right. Wow, man, I have the smartest people. I really just never get over the quality of the questions and all of that stuff. Yes, if it turns out that simulation theory is correct, that the only way to explain the structure of the universe is to say that none of this stuff it is all so unlikely that we must be living in someone else's computer, then what you're basically saying is we cannot explain the unexplainable, therefore we have to go into the world of science fiction, when it turns out that the people who went into the world of religion got it right the first time. Let there be light, boom. That's Asimov, was it the final computer, the ultimate computer? That's his story. Ultimately, the computer says, let there be light, and that's creation. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if it turns out that we're all simulations, and we might be, and that leads to the idea that there's something more real than we are. But see, this is interesting. Am I more real than Master Chief in Halo? You would just immediately say, well, yes, you're a real person, and Master Chief in Halo is just a computer simulation. But am I more real than him? I'm more complicated than him. I'm three dimensional, for one thing. But am I more real than him? I guess what I'm saying is if this is the world, and we smell things and love things and have all of these things and we call this reality, and you tell me that this thing is all simulated, it doesn't mean anything. That you've defined it out of meaning. The only way it would be significant would be if we could compare our reality to the greater reality. In other words, if this is a simulated world that we live in, the only way that that has any meaning at all is to compare it to the so-called real world, the non-simulated world. If you can't compare it to something else, then the idea that it's a simulation completely loses its meaning. It's got we've got nothing to compare it to. Um, this classic woodcut, I want to say it was by Dürer, of a wanderer who's walked all the way to the ends of the earth. He's come across the point where the celestial sphere comes to the earth and there's all the stars, and he's poked his head through and he's looking around and it's nothing but miracles and light and all the rest. He's walked to the end of the earth, to the end of the simulation. He's walked to the boundary in the Truman Show. He's poked his head through the other side of the wall, and it's nothing but a light show. That's when this becoming a simulation has some meaning. But until then, well, first of all, it's a theory. The multiverse is a theory, but the multiverse just, I don't know. The idea that there are infinite number of universes and every single molecule and every single random motion generates an entirely new universe, just, I know that's a horsepower problem. It just doesn't feel right to me. Doesn't feel right. And I have come to put a lot more faith in that than I used to. The entire purpose of science is to get rid of I didn't feel right, that doesn't feel right. Science essentially is there to remove human emotions from the equation when you're asking nature questions that might or may not have an answer. But it does strike me as a little desperate for people to say, well, I can't possibly believe in God, but I could believe that everything that I couldn't possibly believe in God, but I could believe that everything that experienced the planet Earth and everything else has been created by somebody else. That's basically, in a nutshell, what they're saying. And that's your line about you can't bear to admit that grandma was right. It's a way to explain the unexplainable and the extraordinary unlikeliness of it all. And you don't have to admit that grandma was right. Because if it turns out that this is a simulation, and Elon Musk said he's 90% sure that it is, not that he's right about everything either, then somebody built that simulation and somebody created all of us, or at least created the code. So I don't know what you would call that person other than God, because they are all powerful, all knowing, and omniscient, omnipresent, and the fact that you can accept that but not the metaphysical creation says a lot about your blinders, you know. It's a way to think about it gives the unexplainable an explanation. We don't know why this is happening. It's evidence that it's a simulation because it's so unlikely. But we can build simulations ourselves. We haven't been able to fashion people out of clay yet. And so therefore, it's something we can get our brains around scientifically. It's something that's reducible enough for us to understand it. You know, the idea that this all of this stuff is real and was manufactured, planned, created, built. You know, or at the very least, the mechanism for creating it. If it's a simulation, then there's something outside the box, right? And whatever is outside the box created what's inside the box, and everything inside the box, including the Andromeda Galaxy and everything else, is all a result of what's outside the box. I've become so profound, I've taken myself right out of focus. Let's see if I can correct that. Oh, there we go. So, what's in the box? We know what's in the box. What's outside the box? We don't know. But it's easier for us to imagine it as a computer engineer than it is to imagine it as a, to use the words from Desiderata or Deteriorata, hairy thunderer, or cosmic muffin. I think the only wise course, I almost said smart course, but the only wise course is to recognize that where physics, metaphysics, and religion are all reaching in the same direction and pointing at the same things. That should not be that shouldn't be a war. Our friend Jim Harding gave me so many insights. You know, said we really got off the rails as a civilization when materialism split off, and we lost the sense of wonder that something was amazing in and of itself without. You know, it's like sit back and enjoy the Grand Canyon instead of just looking at your feet and getting out your geologist hammer. You know. Instead of just looking at your feet and walking down through this canyon and never once taking your eyes up, just looking down there for fossils or whatever the hell you're looking at, take a moment, take it in, and you don't have to chisel the whole thing apart right at the beginning. Now, Steve Whoops is something that I've been following lately, and evidence is mounting for this, and this is really compelling evidence that this is a simulation, and that is this idea that particles aren't real until they're observed. They don't exist until they're observed. And this makes sense to people who've had any experience with actual simulations, because when we do 3D graphics and things like Unreal Engine does not render the stuff that's behind you. Unreal Engine renders what's on the screen. And if you pan across a scene, it's nothing but a flat plane, and then in the middle of the flat plane is the Taj Mahal, then it'll show you the Taj Mahal and it'll draw it as fast as it can. But when you're looking the other way, the Taj Mahal is not there. It's not rendering it behind you. It just simply doesn't waste the time. And there's some compelling evidence to say that particles and their particle interactions behave so strangely that they don't exist unless they're observed. And you think, well, that can't possibly be true. But, well, what do you mean? Somebody, Eric Blake says, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? Better way to put that would be, if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody to observe it, is the tree even there? Is the forest there? And how sophisticated does the observer have to be? This kind of theory would essentially say that bacteria, the ability of bacteria to observe things is minimal, but it does exist, and that the universe would have to be only as complex as the perception of a bacteria, which basically mean a fluid at a certain temperature with the occasional pheromones floating through it. And the more sophisticated the observer gets, the more sophisticated the universe has to get. This idea basically says that as far as the structure of the universe is concerned, if we are the only observers, then for 200,000 years, the stars were nothing but little campfires in the sky. They're little sparks. And that was good enough. And then as the observations began to increase in complexity, and you have a telescope that blows this image up, now the universe has to draw that thing. It has to render it, is what we would say. And there is some fairly convincing evidence that that the universe only renders what we're looking at. It only creates what we're looking at. Now, as it turns out, 8 billion observers, you walk down New York City, you got a whole bunch of people observing that reality, so that, pretty much is there. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. I'm trying to remember, I'm virtually positive that this experiment where you have a slit and then two slits and the light behaves as a particle one way and then a wave as another way, depending on whether there's an observer or not. I think I remember hearing that if you turn on a camera, it takes that as in other words, even that's an observer, although I might be mistaken about that. But in any event, you can create your own future, I think, for people who are really clear on this whole thing. This visualization thing is often used as a crutch by people who are selling you half the story. All you have to do is imagine something and it will become manifest. If you see it in your mind, it will happen. I'm going to get a brand new Ferrari. Picture yourself driving the Ferrari. Picture yourself driving the Ferrari. Okay, that's a good thing to do on the step to getting a Ferrari if that's your end goal. Picture yourself driving a Ferrari. Now, there are people out there who say that's all you have to do is just picture it, and then the Ferrari will appear. I find that to be not supported by the evidence. I find that if you want to have a Ferrari and you're starting from next to nothing, you can't get to the Ferrari without picturing the Ferrari, but picturing the Ferrari is not what makes it happen. It's the work you do in order to make that picture real. It's work and effort, and I mean work in the physics sense of the word work, where you are using force to alter the state of things. So, Fiery Waco says, no, I identify as a Ferrari owner. Well, you can identify as a Ferrari owner, but I want to see the car. And that's the problem with the self-identity movement, right? I identify as this. Well, show me the car. Anyway, moving on. That was a great question. Roadrunner. And then what do we got here? And then we got Joseph Pomeroy, we got Eric and Chris Taylor again. Okay. Greetings, Group Commander Whittle. Greetings, Roadrunner. If someone were to become interested in learning to fly aircraft, and thank you, by the way, I was talking with Natasha about this. She's had a little bit of damage to her eye. She's had it's not a retinal detachment. That's when the cells in the back of your eye detach. That's very serious. There's something called hang on. Is it macular? Vitreous. Yeah. So it's a vitreous detachment. So basically what happens is as you get older, the fluid in your eyes can get somewhat less, and then it can pull a little bubble. You don't have enough fluid to fill the whole eye, and it pulls a tiny piece of the retina with it. And then those cells then enter your vitreous, your fluid, the clear fluid in your eye, and they create these floaters. and she had that happen to her not too long ago, several months ago, and we went back for a checkup, and it's not gotten any worse, which is good. So eventually, those cells will break down, and her vision will clear up. But she was quite concerned about it. The reason I brought it up is because I was telling her as we were walking out of the building, we parked across from a Gelson's restaurant, which is very, very expensive, but they have generally good fruit. So we're saying, we're going to go in there and we're going to buy some fruits. I said, honey, I know it's strange, but there are many words in English where the plural is the same as the singular, where it's the same word. You don't just add an S. So it's not actually fruits. We're not going to go buy fruits. We're going to go buy fruit. And I said, one of the things I'm seeing a lot of are people referring to aircrafts. There are many aircrafts in this picture, and I just brought that up because Roadrunner didn't make that mistake. Learning to fly aircraft. I have an aircraft. You have an aircraft. Together we have 2 aircraft. If someone were to become interested in learning to fly aircraft, fighters, bombers, transports, or whatever, in DCS, what is the minimum equipment list needed to get started? Is there an ideal setup you would recommend? Finally, how much practice does it take to become adequate? Respectfully, Air Cadet, Second Class Roadrunner, meep, meep. I've been sitting on a bunch of emails from people that sent them in when I asked for them months ago, but I've actually got a chance to start implementing this DCS thing. There are minimum requirements. You can't have an ancient computer. DCS, like any other software, game software, if you set everything to ultra and you've got an older machine, you'll pay for it in frame rate. But like virtually every other video game, you can customize this to your liking. So by simplifying the trees, for example, and the water, the computer doesn't have to work as hard, and you get a better frame rate. And so the question is, how much... Ideally, you want to turn all of the rendering up as high as it'll go and still get an acceptable frame rate, which for most people is 60 FPS, or certainly nothing below 30. Below 30, it starts to get... Somebody once said it was like sandpaper on their eyes. So even with an older rig, you can run DCS. You can run DCS with all of the graphics turned up to ultra. Is just be prepared to, land like that. As far as the rest of it goes, there is required equipment. You can't play DCS really. DCS is a genuine simulator. It's not like War Thunder or Ace Combat, which you usually fly from behind the plane. In fact, I think you only have to fly it from behind the plane. That's a game. That's not a simulation. So what you need for DCS is you need a joystick, you need a throttle, and you need rudder pedals. And one other thing, you need something called track IR. It's just not possible to play it otherwise. So in DCS and any other flight sim, you're looking forward out the window, and you can pan the view left and you can pan the view right. And some people use the coolie hat on the joystick to do that, but we usually use that to set trim. But it's almost required to have. In fact, I would say it is required, because every single switch in the F-18, for example, has a function, and you have to activate those switches, which means a lot of looking down, looking around, looking up. So you need a joystick, you need a throttle, you need rudder pedals, and you need something called track IR. And track IR is tremendous. A little receiver about that big, and the professional version, which I recommend, clips onto your headset or your glasses, and all it is a 3-pointed plastic fork with 3 LED emitters that are mostly emitting in the infrared. And the sensor looks at these 3 dots and the relationship of the 3 dots based on how your head turns. And when you get that thing set up, you turn your head to the left and the view pans, and you look down here and you look up here, and it instantly becomes second nature. If you have that, we're good to go. I realized when I wanted to start talking about starting this DCS squadron, I just had so much fun working with Phil on formation flying. Yeah, HOTAS is throttle, hands on throttle and stick. So you need at least a joystick and a throttle, and ideally you need either, the Thrustmaster or the. I highly recommend the WinWing, the Chinese stick and throttle combination. I just think it's really excellent stuff. Actually, believe it or not, that's what I use. But you have to have this track IR, which is I think about $100, something like this. Not cheap, but it's not crazy expensive either. And I had so much fun working with Phil on formation flying. I just realized I just love teaching flying so much. I taught a lot of pilots in the real world. So if you can come to the table with those things, we'll take you from there. We'll show you how to start the jet, how to taxi the jet, how to take off the jet, how to land the jet. And then once you get the hang of those things, we'll just keep training up and training up and training up. So the answer to your question is, if you can get to the throttle, the stick, the rudder pedals, and the track IR. That's the name of the company, by the way, and you can find it on Amazon as Track IR. Then welcome aboard, and you can tune down your visual experience to get the frame rate that you want, and take it from there. Because we're just going to have a lot of fun. I really like the idea of starting from scratch from people who can't even really fly. It'd be great. Phil is on a extended vacation, and I'm just kind of waiting for him to come back. We'll get that thing activated. So we'll see. And that is one place where being a simulation is much nicer than being in the real world, because you can reboot, and being able to reboot is a nice thing. All right, moving on here. From Joseph Pomeroy. Great news, I found Frank Luke for you. Wow, thank you. Tanner Buchanan is an actor that previously worked with Daily Wire on their movie The Hyperions. Okay, let's have a look at Tanner Buchanan. Yes. Yes. That's excellent. You really did. That's a very good match. You make him blonde and yep. Yep, he's got that angular face. That's a really great choice. The age looks about right. So Andy's already worked for Daily Wire, so we know he's on Team Good Guy, or at least he's not opposed to him. So I'm looking at all these headshots here and all these. Yeah, that's a really excellent suggestion. It's by far the best I've heard so far. Luke is so iconically blonde. My friend Fritz is iconically blonde too, and he can't tell you the number of times that he went in and just aced auditions. He's a professional actor for 30 years, and aced auditions, and then basically had them say, "You were far and away the best actor that we read, but we wanted somebody who was brown hair." And he's like, "I can dye my hair. This is not a big deal, Well, that's good to know. No, he's a very good match. It's really quite a tremendous observation on your part. Yeah, he's got that kind of bird of prey look. And there's a couple of these shots. I'm just looking at nothing but images now. A couple of images when I think, yeah, by God, that is really, really, really good. You did. You found our Frank Luke, and we know how to reach him, apparently. So thank you for that. That's a big relief. As an actor previously worked with Daily Wire in the movie The Hyperions, he's also one of the stars in an amazing Netflix series, Cobra Kai, an amazing Netflix series called Three Body Problem, which has done an amazing job bringing the nostalgia of the 80s to the screen. Best review I ever heard for Cobra Kai is, it works in a world where kicking someone in the face solves 99% of your problems, and the show is hilarious. Anyway, back to Tanner Buchanan. He's very young looking, incredible shape, and is very, very skinny. This means he'll be able to play the young teenager, sweaty dancing miner, and look the part of the officer in uniform. Yep. Out of my question for the evening. Thank you for that very much. Really appreciate that, Joseph. With the oh God, and Drinker covered this. With the addition of female custodians so haphazardly added to an established IP like Warhammer, when can we finally start putting money into buying building IP that people will give us their money and not these soulless fiends? Yes. I'm just wrapping up my sixth or seventh Warhammer video of the past few days talking about these announced female custodies for the Emperor's protectors. This type of crap is getting really old. Taking these IPs and decades of dedicated fandom just to be called sexist and bigoted is pissing me off. I will post this Thursday or next, which I think is a good allegory for this type of provocation, but the most recent 40K video announced that there are rumors that Henry Cavill might drop Amazon because Games Workshop is going to do the same crap to 40K that Netflix did to The Witcher. I hope he does. I hope he does. Seems like some of us need to get out of this world and maybe create a colony. Always a happy warrior, Joel. Yes. For those of you not up on it, the Warhammer 40K is a fantastic universe. It's a fantastic IP, intellectual property. It's got, I read 60 novels in the Siege of Terror, and then I read another, 9 or 10 or whatever for, for the Horus, 60 for the Horus Heresy, and another 9 or 10 for Siege of Terror. It's fantastic. And it's a dark, dark universe that features these super warriors called Astartes, and they're all derived from the strongest males from throughout the galaxy, and even then some 7% survive the procedure or whatever. And then the super warriors, the Legioni Custodes, are the protectors of the Emperor, and they're even better than the Astartes, and those are all male. And then they've just added, but some of them are female now. So we're going to have Custodes that are not as fast, not as strong, not as smart, and not as violent, not as dedicated, not as focused. They're just gonna put a couple of bumps on the front of the armor and say that girls can be Custodes too. Drinker's take on it, I think, was exactly right. There's no appeasing these people. They are doing it to ruin it. It's not that they're 40K fans. It's that somebody has said no girls allowed, and that's they just can't handle that. They just can't handle the fact that that there's a sign there that says no girls allowed. They want the sign torn down, and they want to tear down the building that put up the sign, and then they want to walk away and look for more signs that say no girls allowed. And so that's basically it. That's really, really, really what it is. And what I find interesting is that apparently Games Workshop took, you want to talk about the deal with the devil. The word I'd heard is that Games Workshop took some money from BlackRock. Now, BlackRock, as you may know, I think is the world's largest investment fund. BlackRock is the company that insists on DEI. The idea that the most brutal, heartless, capitalist, rapacious kind of financial company in the world is insisting upon socialism is telling me that BlackRock has bigger plans than BlackRock. If BlackRock were putting all that money and effort into the free market, that would make sense. For BlackRock as a private investment company with private holdings of trillions of dollars, I want to say by now, then there's no sense to that other than societal engineering. So if GW took money from BlackRock, that would explain why they're forcing this through, because the fans hate it. There is no fan base to appeal to. It's not like there's legions of women out there. They just put some pressure on them, and so they caved. And if they caved, it's because BlackRock said either you're not going to get our money, or we want the money back that we loaned you, or we're going to vote you out of your own company because we bought so many shares and you were more than happy to take the money but now you're time to pay the piper. So, yeah, I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want BlackRock to be able to take it over. I don't want Daily Wire to be able to take it over. I don't want to have to bow to anybody. I just really, really think that people would really stand up and cheer if somebody just told them to go, pound sand, to put it kindly. Yeah, Kaladin Stockley says that people are pushing back against all this. They are pushing back, and what's more than that is they're pushing back because no one else is really leading the charge. Calville, who I always liked, has because I just thought he was a great Superman. Him leaving The Witcher because he got too PC raised my opinion of him enormously. And then people are saying in the comment section that he said if he's not given complete creative control, he's not on the project. He's a fan. He's a fan. I didn't know that until, a year ago or something. But Calville is a fan. He reads this stuff and plays this stuff, and he happens to be one of the top actors in the world and top demand actors in the world. And he's a fan. If George Lucas had been a fan of Star Wars, we wouldn't have been in this situation. But George Lucas is not a fan of Star Wars. George Lucas is the creator of Star Wars, and George Lucas owns the rights to Star Wars, but he's not a Star Wars fan. And therein lies the problem. Gene Roddenberry was a Star Trek fan. George Lucas is not a Star Wars fan. George Lucas is a George Lucas fan. So, yeah. But BlackRock is... It is the most... by any definition, it is the kind of entity that socialists hate the most. Sheer money capital that doesn't really manufacture anything or produce anything other than capital. Now, I'm not naive enough to say, well, geez, they're not producing anything of value. You can't go build a museum or a restaurant until you have the money. That's the first thing you need is the money. So obviously, I'm not opposed to financial entities, but for one to be that powerful and for it to be so aggressively left-wing doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to anybody. There's something under the table going on that would cause this ultimate market machine to be promoting anti-market philosophies. There you go. Okay, so we got Eric and Chris. All right, I said I'd do them all, and I'll do them all. Second question, Bill, but only if we have the time. Well, I'll make the time. So as we've discussed lazy writing and how you fixed it, the thought occurred to me that two films widely regarded as great classics, but frankly have some of the most incredibly lazy writing I've ever seen. It's easy to call it out with movies or shows we don't like anyway, and I suppose I must issue a trigger warning for those of sensitive disposition, but that makes good writing all the more vital. We shouldn't need to make excuses for an otherwise enjoyable film, so here we go, spoiler warning in advance. First film is Signs. Yes, I remember Signs. So let me get this straight. An advanced interstellar race capable of great feats of space travel and technologies decided to invade a planet that's over 70% water, which just happens to be what kills them. Are we supposed to somehow believe that this advanced interstellar race didn't know that, let alone wasn't smart enough to wear any protection from it? Okay. Signs, when the moment in Signs when you realize that the aliens are killed by water was the exact instant that M. Night Shyamalan's career ended. That exact instant, when you first completely realize that all you have to do is pour water on these aliens to kill them, was the end of his career. And everything he's done since that moment has been utter garbage, and he's not even He's not even mentioned in conversation anymore. That was the ultimate jump the shark moment. Um, it's it's so shockingly, it's too much of an ask, you know. There's the willing suspension of disbelief, and then so you're basically saying, okay, look, you're the filmmaker here. I'm going to give you my attention, and I'm not only am I going to give you my attention, I'm going to lower my screens. You know, I'm going to lower the shields. I'm going to go in this thing. I'm not going to think critically about it. If you tell me that you move this lever and you go real fast through space, then fine. But there comes a point where you can take so much of that in one bite that you just like, okay, look, you know, I mean, I'm an audience member, but I'm not a chump. You can't make those kind of demands of the suspension of disbelief. There are holes that are too big to survive. You cannot clear that gap. You're trying to make a long jump across an area that is simply too wide, and the audience doesn't have the patience, the time, or the intelligence to stay any longer with this. It's like, rather, it has all of those things. It's too much to ask of the suspension of disbelief because it's so obviously stupid. It's so obviously stupid. Um, it it's just laugh out loud stupid, and it strikes me as lazy because I'm sure that if I gave it some thought, I could think of a way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Because the twist isn't so much that water kills them, the twist is swing the bat. There's a guy who's having visions and, you know, his wife killed in a car crash and all the rest of it. And basically, he swings the bat and knocks over this water thing or whatever, gets on the aliens and kills the water, kills the aliens by knocking water on them. The payoff isn't that the aliens are dissolve underwater. The payoff is swing the bat, and using water was just plain lazy, and it was so lazy, so egregiously lazy that you watching the movie in the middle of the movie, I said exactly what Eric just said. Wait a minute, you've come all this way from an interstellar planet where water is the requirement for life. It is the requirement for us. We're always looking for water everywhere. You need water for life. And these aliens come to the planet Earth and they find out that there's water here and they hadn't anticipated that. They're here to conquer this species. The planet is 70% water. We're 70% water. It's just too much. It's just too stupid to get by. People just check out. They just check out. And that was when M. Night Shyamalan became a laughingstock. Right then. Right then. I liked Sixth Sense very much. I liked Unbreakable a lot. I thought it was a really clever idea. But it's too much, you know? Too much. I actually like The Village, as a matter of fact. I know a lot of people didn't. I was disappointed that those creatures weren't real, but I thought it was a good twist. So that's the first film. The second film that Eric is ready to demolish for us here and destroy our childhood is second film might stun you because you've sung its praises of this film before, but it's the first Superman film with Christopher Reeve. So let me get this straight. First, Lex Luthor has only two minions with him. One's a bumbling idiot. The other's a supermodel who doesn't exactly like him. Say no more. I'm with you 100% of the way. That alone is. Oh, Mr. Luthor. Yeah, that is. There's no defense for that. Gene Hackman is a great villain. Oh, Gene Hackman's great everything. I buy Miss Tessmacher, but the but somebody made a calculation. Donner made a calculation that we need comic relief, and the only place that we can put it is in Lex Luthor's henchmen. it's kind of like Batman in that way. You know, the TV Batman, not the movies. Um, he's you know, and he's wearing that wig which he takes off at the very end. All of that stuff is fluffery that lowers the value of the movie. However, there is a the Superman. I was mentioning this with Star Wars. That first Superman movie is a great movie, and it's a great movie because it's a fun movie. And I suspect the reason they did that was so that people wouldn't take it too seriously. I remember seeing the movie in theaters, and I remember the tagline was "You will believe a man can fly," because it was the first time they were ever able to digitally remove the wires. And so, sure enough, you know, that guy looks like he's flying. Yeah, I look at it now; it looks horrible, but the practical him, you know, jumping off of a balcony or something is pretty impressive. Um, and and I think that they probably did it because they didn't want it to be taken too seriously. Christopher Reeve has a couple of moments. Well, it's one of my favorite stretches of film ever. I mean, it's one of my favorite 5 minute, 3 minute stretches of film, 2 minute stretches of film ever. It's right up there with the, you know, the helicopter attack on the village in Apocalypse Now, and it's just iconic. And that's the ending of the first movie when Superman delivers Lex Luthor and whatever his name is, and then he starts and the warden comes out and he says, "The country is safe again thanks to you, Superman." And Superman says, "Don't thank me, Warden. We're all part of the same team." Tosses him a little salute, goes up into space, rises above the dawn. The sun is rising over America. He's out there. He flies, and just as he's flying out of frame, he looks at the camera and smiles. He breaks the fourth wall. So that's Superman went into this with a wink. I think that movie's winking at you from the beginning. It's just not spitting on you. Lazy. Well, no, it's not. I wouldn't call that lazy. No, hang on. There's more. Second, the whole thing at the end of Superman being able to go back in time and fix a mistake. Now, in and of itself is not a problem if and only if you have no intention of making sequels. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Him going back in time was precisely like Admiral What's-Her-Name using the hyperspace drive to take out the fleet. It's a one-time device that you want to use, and it completely changes the laws of the universe, and you can't undo it. Because if Superman could do it once, he can do it every single time. There's no movie that could happen. Once you've done it, none of the other Supermen have to happen. The second he starts getting in trouble, he just backs up the Earth like he did last time. Otis, that's right, Otis for Ned Beatty. Ned Beatty's terrific. Yes, that is lazy. The backing up of time was lazy, and stupid, because you can't. You know, you just can't. You can't give Superman that kind of superpower. Superman has super abilities within the world of Superman, but Superman doesn't have the ability to change the scripts. He lives inside that simulation. The script of the Superman movie is the simulation. Superman and Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman live inside that script, and the ability to reverse time to make everything okay extends outside of the script. It now is. You're right. You can't have sequels. Anytime anything happens after that movie, no problem. We'll just go back and spin the Earth backwards. And this whole business of spinning the Earth backwards, by the way, that's a pretty big reach. Now, the difference between the two is that, like I said, Superman comes at you with a wink. You know, it's Superman comes at you. It's like, this movie is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun movie, but no one's taking it seriously the way that you want take Signs seriously. So the thing in Signs was a bigger reach, and at the same time, it was supposed to be a serious movie. Superman, throws this crystal, and out comes the Fortress of Solitude, which I thought was fantastic. So him flying circles around the Earth, making the Earth stop and go backwards, I'm on board because I like Christopher Reeve and I like Superman. Wasn't a fan of Lois Lane. Lois Lane is a tough character. I wasn't a fan of what's her name, who played her on TV, because I was young enough to see the George Reeves TV show. I'm old enough to see the George Reeves TV shows as a little tiny kid, a 3-year-old kid, when I was living in New York before we moved to Bermuda, living in New Jersey, I guess, across the river. But what was her name? She had not the TV Lois Lane has one of those names where the same 2 letters. It sounds like the actress's name sounds like a comic book character's name. But yeah, I agree with you. Those were hard-boiled reporter is kind of a film noir staple, and no, not Margot Kidder. Somebody just if you can remind me, who played Lois Lane on the TV show on the George Reeves TV show. I'll find Come on, Billy, you can do it. Hang on. I thought he was a great Superman. He doesn't even look like a. I mean, he's not crazy strong, I mean, he just looks like a kind of a decent shaped guy here. Hang on, I'm gonna find out. By God, I'm not even checking the comments anymore. Noel Neal? That's not who I'm thinking of. I don't think. It looks like her though. Hang on. I guess it is Noel Neal. Why does that not feel right to me? Noel Neal. I thought for sure it was something different than that. But it was Noel Neal. No? Yes? Were there 2 of them? I guess not. I'm hallucinating. Okay, Noel Neal. Yeah, whatever. All right. I think we got one more question left. Chris Taylor again. Is your website ready for big membership and PR drive right now? No. I just have to think with all the universities filling with protests targeting Jewish students and suing to keep discriminating against white and Asian students too, that there might be some former university donors suddenly looking for new places to put their money that would seek to turn the culture back to the classically liberal values. That's a very interesting and great point, and thank you for that. If it rains soup, it doesn't do you any good if you don't have a bowl. Rain soup, it doesn't do you any good if you don't have a bowl. Yes, that's great. I have mentioned a couple times this show and mentioned a couple times during the last couple weeks, just finished the script for Frank Luke 3 weeks ago. And since then, I have been just a blob. So I am trying to recover from that, but that is something I have on the agenda for tomorrow morning, is to get in touch with the web guy. In fact, I'll do that tonight because he's on the other side of the world, and get started on buffing that thing up. But that is exactly correct. You're exactly right. Thanks, Chris. Okay, well, and with that, I think 309. That's not bad. 309 is not bad. So that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who keep the lights on physically and spiritually and emotionally and mentally. They keep the lights on figuratively, and they literally keep the lights on. Our members literally keep the lights on. If you're a member at BillWhittle.com, you literally keep the lights on. You literally do. That's the end of that. So I guess we will see you on Thursday night for the Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll say goodnight to our friends at Twitch first. So see you in a couple days. Okay, YouTube, you know who you are. You know who you are. You know what you are. You disgust me. I'm gonna just cut this stream, and then I'm gonna puke my guts out. All right, guys, good to see you. Hey, there's Unlimited Horror Works. Okay, guys, thanks.